Hi, good evening. Welcome to our reading of Star Trek First Contact in our little monthly Star Trek reading here. I'm Anne, your quasi host this evening. I will be playing Deanna Troy as normal. We also have Hunter Karras returning as Captain Jean Luc Picard. And as Commander William Riker, we have Curtis. And tonight, our Lieutenant Commander Data is going to be played by Charlie. And our Dr. Beverly Crusher is going to be once again Christos. And tonight we also have Chief Engineer Geordie LaForge, which is Jared. Welcome. And our board queen this evening, if you couldn't tell, is going to be the lovely Chelsea there with the really creepy scars. It's amazing. Alexander is going to be our Zephram Cochran this evening.
I've started
And
drinking already.
Molly is going to be the indomitable Lily, who's my favorite character in this movie. And we've got Will with us. He's going to be Porter and Reginald Barclay, the best Star Trek character, because he's also Murdoch in A-Team. And we also have Kate back with us. She is going to be doing scene direction. She's going to be Admiral Hayes. And our lovely Robert Picardo, EMH Doctor, and Neelix, which is the Mater D. So, all right, without further ado, take us away.
Star Trek First Contact. Fade in. Main titles are intercut with the following sequence. Extreme close-up, a human eye. Staring blankly, the pupil and cornea fill the frame. We begin to pull back, slowly revealing the face of Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Whoosh! We zoom back with lightning speed to see Picard is standing inside a vast chamber crammed with thousands of Borg drones, standing upright in their individual alcoves. They're everywhere, on the ceiling, walls, floor. This is the Borg Collective, thousands of Borg, what form a gigantic hive mind. Everything's dank, monochrome, except for the one tiny smudge of color in the far distance, Picard's uniform, the original. Any explosion of surreal imagery. A subjective point of view rushing down a Borg corridor, camera tilting wildly, Borg drones line the walls, half human, half machine, with lifeless expressions, like vampires in their coffins. Surreal imagery number 2, Picard being slammed down onto a Borg operating table. A Borg hand holds down his head. Surreal imagery, Picard's eye staring again as the needle-sharp probe begins moving directly towards it. Surreal imagery number 4, Picard back in uniform, standing on the alcove as before. He's struggling against the restraints, but he can't get out. Surreal imagery, a woman's mouth. The skin pale, lips drained of color, the mouth smiles, speaks in a low, raspy voice.
Locutus.
Surreal imagery, a Borgified Picard, Locutus, turned in response to his name, his face half covered with Borg machinery. Surreal image, human Picard in the alcove, struggling to get out. Surreal image, Borgified Picard.
I am Locutus of Borg. Resistance is futile.
Surreal imagery, Picard's eye as the needle-like probe reaches the cornea, a split second away from puncturing the surface. Picard screams. Picard bolts awake, sweating, panting. We see all that was a nightmare. He sits up on the couch in uniform, and we see that we are now interior Enterprise ready room. Picard makes his way across the room to new angle, bathroom. He reaches under the faucet and water automatically comes on. He splashes some of it onto his face, looks up in the mirror, stares at his reflection. His breathing slows as he begins to relax. A muscle in his cheek twitches slightly and produces a strange chirping sound. Picard grimaces, but it won't stop. He reaches up, tries to smooth it with his hand, but it still won't stop twitching. He frowns. Suddenly the Borg servo punches through the flesh of his cheek. Shock cut to Picard sitting on his couch. This time he's really awake. We hear the chirping sound again. He jumps slightly, but he realizes it's the computer monitor on his desk. He lets his breathing slow, then moves to his desk, looks on the monitor, and focuses on what it says. The monitor screen shows a message, incoming transmission, Starfleet Command to Captain Jean-Luc Picard, USS Enterprise, NCC 1701-E, command authorization required. Picard taps the control.
Authorization Picard, 47 Alpha Tango.
Angle on the monitor screen. The screen changes to a Starfleet logo. Then we see a high-ranking official at Starfleet headquarters appear, Admiral Hayes.
Admiral?
Catch you at a bad time, Jean-Luc?
No, of course not.
I just received a disturbing report from Deep Space 5. Long-range sensors have picked up, but Picard already knows what he's going to say. We will learn, Picard has a mysterious connection to the Borg. He knows what's going on even before the Admiral says it.
Yeah, the Borg.
Off the Admiral's surprised look and title sequence, exterior space, a nebula. A multicolored riot of gas, dust, and radiation. Out of the clouds comes a new Starship Enterprise, a sleek, powerful-looking vessel. Interior, observation lounge, a spacious, comfortable room with an impressive array of windows looking out into space. One wall of the room is dominated by a large glass case which is filled with models of previous Enterprises, souvenirs of past missions, books, commendations from Starfleet, etc. There's a sense of pride and tradition here. Picard is facing the team. Data, Riker, Troy, Geordi, Beverly. Note Geordi no longer wears the visor. He has an electronic ocular implants for his eyes.
How many ships?
1, and it's on a direct course for Earth. We'll cross the Federation border in less than an hour. Admiral Hayes has begun mobilizing a fleet in the Typhon sector.
Maximum warp. It will take us 3 hours, 25 minutes to reach.
We're not going.
If possible, this stuns everyone even more.
What do you mean we're not going?
Our orders are to patrol the neutral zone, in case the Romulans take advantage of the situation.
The Romulans.
Captain, there has been no unusual activity along the Romulan border for the past 9 months. It seems highly unlikely that they would choose this moment to start a conflict.
Does Starfleet feel we need more shakedown time?
We've been in space for nearly a year. We're ready. The Enterprise E is the most advanced starship in the fleet. We should be in the front lines.
I've gone through all of this with Starfleet Command. Their orders stand.
Dead silence falls on the room.
Number 1. Set course for the neutral zone.
Picard exits as everyone takes on the shocking news. Cut to exterior space, the Enterprise, at impulse. Interior ready room, close on a cup of Earl Grey tea. We are assaulted by opera playing at full volume. The cup is rattling on its saucer in time to dark blaring music. Move to reveal Picard staring out the window, his arms crossed, a fierce expression on his face, the music seemingly channeling his anger into the air. After a beat, Picard sees the reflection of Riker entering the ready room behind him. Picard turns as Riker winces at the incredibly loud music. Picard taps a control on his desk and the music drops to a muted level, but does not stop playing. Riker smiles a little.
Is that?
Early yours. What do you have?
Riker hands him a pad.
We finished our first sensor sweep of the neutral zone.
Picard takes the pad and glances at it.
Fascinating. 20 particles of space dust per cubic meter. 52 ultraviolet radiation spikes on a Class 2 comet. It's certainly worth our time.
He tosses it onto a table. Riker eyes him. They have a long relationship together, and Riker is one of the few people who might get Picard to open up at this moment.
Captain, why are we out here chasing comets?
Picard looks at him, tries to let go of some of the tension in his voice.
Let's just say that Starfleet has every confidence in the Enterprise and her crew. They're not so sure about its captain.
He takes a couple of steps around the room, anger and frustration in every word and gesture as he paraphrases Starfleet's own orders to him.
I believe that a man who was once captured by the Borg and assimilated should not be put in a situation where he would face them again. To do so would be to introduce an unstable element into a critical situation.
Riker can't believe what he's hearing.
That's ridiculous. Your experience with the Borg makes you the perfect man to lead this fight.
Admiral Hayes disagrees.
Troy's calm voice breaks the moment.
Bridge to Captain Picard.
Go ahead.
We've just received word from the fleet. They've engaged the Borg.
Picard and Riker exchange a look, then they both head out. Cut to interior bridge. Picard and Riker enter. Troy and ND is at their station. The bridge has been redesigned. A single captain's chair dominates the room, surrounding consoles and stations all face inward instead of out, giving Picard instant access to his officers. An officer named Lieutenant Hawk sits at con. Data is at ops. Picard moves to his chair.
Mr. Data, put Starfleet frequency 1486 on audio.
Aye, sir.
Data works his console. As Picard sits down, we begin to hear comm traffic from the distant battle. It's staticky, eerie. The faces of everyone on the bridge betray an inner tension as the faraway battle takes place.
Flagship! To Endeavor! Stay back engaged with the grid 15! Defiant to Bozeman! Fall back to the bubble position 1! Acknowledge! We have a visual range! Borg cube on course 0 milk 125! Speed warp 9.8!
Suddenly, a Borg voice breaks in, thousands of voices speaking as one. And as the Borg speak, we move into on Picard's face.
We are the
We are the
Borg. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to us.
Resistance is
futile. We are the Borg.
The comm voices are now interspersed with explosions, static, a chaotic cacophony.
This is the flagship! They've broken through the defense perimeter! They're heading towards Earth! Pursuit course! Pick off and attack! All units open fire! Remodulation, shield modulation! Full power! One quick breach! All hands abandon ship!
A loud exploding sound startles everybody. The voice is more urgent now.
I already did that.
Picard signals Data to cut off the transmission. He's hard enough. A tense moment of silence as everyone looks at the captain, wondering what he'll do next.
Course for Earth, maximum warp.
Surprised looks around the bridge. Picard exchanges knowing look with Riker, then turns on his crew.
I'm about to commit a direct violation of our orders. Any of you who wish to object, do so now. It will be noted in my log.
Everyone looks at each other, and no one objects.
I think I speak for everyone here, sir, when I say, to hell with our orders.
Red alert, all hands to battle stations.
The ship goes red alert, and people scramble into action. Picard settles into his chair.
Engage.
Exterior space, the Enterprise, as it turns and blasts into warp. Cut to exterior space, Earth, the familiar blue marble hanging in the far distance. A peaceful sight, until suddenly a gray mass, the Borg cube, enters frame. Camera pans with the cube as it flies past, and we see that the massive ship is on speedy course directly for the distant Earth. A barrage of torpedoes whisk in off camera and slam into the Borg ship, causing damage all along the surface. Wider, showing a massive space battle in progress, a dozen Starfleet vessels are swarming about the massive Borg cube like flies around a giant elephant. The Borg ship sends out deadly fire of its own, destroying one ship and severely damaging another. New angle, the Defiant, which is in the thick of the action. 5 rapid Borg torpedoes slam into it, but it was built to take this kind of punishment, and it unleashes its own phaser of fire. Interior, Defiant bridge shaking, smoke, debris, several dead bodies lying about. The ship has taken a few hard hits and is falling apart at the seams. Someone reaches up and a hand from behind a sparking console, clamps down on it and heaves himself upwards. It's Worf. He looks bedraggled and has a nasty-looking gash on his cheek.
Report!
Main power is offline. We've lost shields and our weapons are gone.
A grim beat.
Perhaps today is a good day to die. Ramming speed.
Sir, there's another starship coming in. It's the Enterprise.
Off Worf's surprise, exterior space, the Enterprise swoops into view and unleashes its own barrage of fire at the Borg ship. The cube concentrates its fire on the Enterprise now. Interior, Enterprise bridge, red alert.
The Defiant's losing life support.
Bridge to Transporter Room 3. Beam the Defiant survivors aboard.
Captain, the Admiral's ship has been destroyed.
What's the status on the Borg cube?
It has sustained heavy damage on its outer hull. I am reading fluctuations in their power grid.
On screen?
New angle, Picard view screen. A tense beat. Picard stands, moves towards the image of the massive cube as it wipes onto the holographic view screen, and he hears the faint voices of the Borg collective in his head, an eerie cacophony. The voices fade and he seems to realize something. New angle, Picard.
Number 1. Open a channel to the other Starfleet vessels.
Riker works, Picard moves to Data's console and begins working it rapidly.
This is Captain Picard of the Enterprise. I'm taking command of the fleet. Target every weapon you have on the following coordinates and fire on my command.
Captain, the coordinates you have indicated do not appear to be a vital system.
Trust me, Data.
Please respond, sir. You're standing by.
Fire.
Exterior space. Every Federation ship, including the Enterprise, opens up with a blinding display of firepower, phasers and torpedoes honing in on a single spot on the cube. After a few seconds, even the massive Borg vessel can't withstand the onslaught. It explodes in a titanic blast. Interior bridge. Everyone reacting to the explosion. The ship trembles slightly. Exterior space. Out of the expanding cloud of gas, a flame, a portal opens in the cube, and another ship emerges. A Borg sphere flying at high speed past the camera and towards Earth. Interior Enterprise bridge view screen. Picard stares at the sphere as it zips away. New angle on Picard.
Pursuit course, engage.
Picard moves back to his chair with a troubled look on his face as he realizes what just happened. Troy senses his turmoil and moves to him.
What?
I can hear them.
Picard doesn't respond, just the turbolift doors open and Beverly enters.
I have a patient here who insisted on coming to the bridge.
She turns with a smile as Worf enters, his uniform still torn and bloodied, but otherwise okay.
Welcome to the Enterprise E, Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, sir. The Defiant.
Adrift, but salvageable.
A full ship.
Little.
Riker smiles. It's good to see his friend again.
Could use some help at Tactical, Wolf.
Worf moves to Tactical, relieves the ND working there, and begins familiarizing himself with the console. Riker moves with him.
You do remember how to fire phasers.
Worf gives him a look. Exterior space Borg sphere, which is making a nosedive towards Earth. Interior bridge as before.
Sensors showing chronometric particles emanating from the sphere.
Picard studies the monitor.
They're creating a temporal vortex.
Time travel.
Exterior Earth's atmosphere. The Borg sphere glowing red and beginning to burn with friction as it plummets towards Earth. Just ahead of the sphere, a temporary vortex opens, a maelstrom of light and energy stretching into infinity. The sphere flies inside. As it does, it creates a splash of energy that blasts outward. The Enterprise, as it's hit by the energy wake from the vortex. Interior bridge. The ship trembles. The view screen shows the energy wake sweeping over the ship.
We appear to be caught in a temporal wake.
The trembling subsides.
Captain, the Earth.
Angle on the view screen. Everyone looks at it. The energy wake is thinning to reveal Earth, but Earth has changed. The blue marble is now covered by dark, turbulent atmosphere. The vortex is still open. Visible within the vortex is blue Earth, normal Earth. New angle.
The atmosphere contains high concentrations of methane, carbon monoxide, and fluorine.
Life signs.
Population approximately 9 billion. All Borg.
A shocking moment.
But how?
They must have done it in the past. They went back and assimilated Earth, changed history.
But if they changed history, why are we still here?
The temporal wake must have somehow protected us from the changes in the timeline.
Data's console beeps.
The vortex is collapsing.
Mr. Hawk, hold your course. We have to follow them back, repair whatever damage they've
Hawk
done.
works. Cut to exterior space, the Enterprise, and vortex. The Enterprise just barely makes it inside the vortex as it finally collapses. Both the Enterprise and the vortex vanish. Exterior missile complex Night, a mid-21st century missile complex in Montana. This is a base that was probably built in the late 20th century by U.S. Air Force and should have the familiar elements: concept huts, tents, radar dishes, etc. The complex is now a makeshift community of sorts, populated by ex-soldiers, ranchers, and various drifters who have come here for shelter, food, and some sense of community. New angle. One of the tent structures has been converted into a bar. People going in and out, some lights, a little music playing, and slightly futuristic jukebox. A man and a woman exit the bar and walk out into the cold Montana night. The man is mid-50s, graying hair, a little drunk. His name is Zephram Cochrane, a brilliant but eccentric scientist with more than a passing fondness for alcohol. The woman is Lily Sloan, black, 30s. She's pretty smart, with the cutting sense of humor and somewhat volatile temper. Lily likes Cochrane, but the thing that binds them together is the dream of launching into the warp ship and making a lot of money. He comes up with the idea, she scavenges or steals the equipment he needs.
You're going to regret this.
Cochrane waves a bit and she puts her arms on his and steadies him.
There's one thing you should have learned about me by now, Lily. It's that I have no regrets. Come on, one more round.
He tries to turn back to the bar, but she keeps on course.
You've had enough, Z. I'm not going in that thing with a drunken pilot.
Well, I'm sure as hell not going up there sober.
Lily suddenly notices something up in the night sky.
What the hell is that?
Cochrane glances up in his drunken haze.
That, my dear, is a constellation Leo.
No, that.
She points to the night sky. Across the starry heavens, we can see a tiny bright light moving, the Borg sphere. They peer into the strange light, and as they watch, two distant photon blasts streak away from the sphere. New angle, Lily and Cochrane, as they hear distant boom, they react with puzzlement, and then, wham, a photon bolt slams into the ground nearby, ripping out a huge hole in the earth. They both dive for cover as the mysterious star in the sky unleashes a barrage of photon fire, which rips into the military base. Wider, the photons fire from orbit, causing a terrific damage. Huge explosions, fire, people scrambling for cover, desperately looking for cover from the mysterious attack.
It's the Econ.
Lily grabs Cochrane and tries to get them both under some kind of shelter. Cochrane's attitude is depressed and tinged with irony. He's a man who's watching his dream being yanked away.
After all of these years.
More explosions in the background as they huddle for cover. Unlike Cochrane, Lily isn't ready to give up the fight.
We gotta get to the Phoenix.
She takes off, assuming Cochrane's going to follow, but he takes 2 steps to follow her, and then nearby an explosion makes him think twice. Lily continues running towards the distant missile silo.
To hell with the Phoenix!
And he heads back towards the bar. Exterior space, the vortex. The Enterprise comes roaring out into space. The vortex vanishes behind the ship. Interior bridge. The shaking subsides. Everyone exchanges a look, tries to reorient themselves.
Report.
Shields are down. Long-range sensors are offline. Main power's holding.
According to our astrometric readings, we are in the mid-21st century. From the radioactive isotopes in the atmosphere, I would estimate we have arrived approximately 10 years after the Third World War.
Makes sense. Most of the major cities were destroyed. Only a few governments left. 600 million dead. No resistance.
Captain.
Angle, view screen. Everyone looks at the view screen, which now shows the Borg vessel firing its photons at the surface of the Earth. Angle on Picard.
Quantum torpedoes, fire.
Exterior space, the Enterprise. On the underside of the saucer, we see the torpedo launcher send out a spread of 5 quantum torpedoes. The Borg sphere, as the torpedoes penetrate the sphere, there's a long moment when we see internal explosions and flashes begin to happen within the sphere itself. A beat later, the sphere explodes. Interior bridge. As the Enterprise is rocked by the shock wave, a momentary sense of relief from everyone, but then Picard moves into action.
We're firing at the surface. Location.
Riker moves to the console and begins working it.
Western Hemisphere. North American continent. Looks like a missile complex in central Montana.
Missile complex.
This strikes a chord in Picard. He thinks quickly.
The date. Data. I need to know the exact date.
The date is April 4th, 2063.
Picard and Riker exchange a look. This date has significance to both of them.
4th. The day before first contact.
Precisely.
If that's true, then the missile complex must be where Zephyr Cochrane is building his warp ship.
That's what they came here to do. Stop first contact.
How much damage did they do?
What was that, Admiral Hawk?
Can't tell. Long-range sensors are still offline.
Picard makes an instant decision. They don't have much time.
We have to go down there. Find out what happened. Data, Beverly, you're with me. Number 1, have a security team meet us in Transporter Room 3. Computer, mid-21st century civilian clothes. Number 1, go to the bridge.
Riker nods. Picard, Beverly, and Data head for the door. Cut to exterior missile silo night. Picard, Data, Beverly, and 4 security guards materialize near the perimeter of a large missile launch area. They're all wearing civilian clothes. No comm badges in sight. A huge poured concrete door covers the silo below. The Borg phaser fire has created giant smoking craters in the ground. The away team draws phasers and tricorders. Picard sees a metal staircase leading to underground.
There.
They head for the stairs and start walking below. Cut to interior missile silo control room. This small underground room is filled with 21st century equipment, consoles, and monitors. The ceiling has partially collapsed. Chunks of concrete and fallen beams have destroyed some of the equipment. Only a few of the consoles are actively. Most are dark or fritzing sporadically. 3 dead bodies can be seen strewn around the room. Picard and his team enter the dark and smoking room, and Beverly quickly scans the room.
They're all dead.
See if one of them's Cochrane. Data, let's check on the warp ship.
Data and Picard head out a doorway. Interior missile silo, corridor night, a long narrow passageway loading between the control room and silo. Picard and Data on the move. Interior missile silo. Lily, the woman seen earlier, is crouched down on a catwalk holding the automatic weapon. She reacts to the sound of the blast door sliding open, shrinks behind some cover, holding her weapon at the ready. Her face is covered with sweat. She blinks. Although there's no obvious wound, she's not feeling well and has trouble concentrating. What we'll learn is radiation poisoning. New angle, blast door. As Picard and Data step onto an upper catwalk which surrounds the silo walls, in the middle is the warp ship itself. It should look like an advanced ICBM missile with the cockpit in place of the warhead and with numerous modifications to the fuselage. The name Phoenix is written on the side. There is obvious damage to the ship, scorch marks, etc. Data scans it. There's other catwalks below this one with ladders connecting the different levels.
There is significant damage to the fuselage and primary intercooler system.
Lily is having difficulty seeing the people on the catwalk above her. From her POV, the image of Picard and Data drifts in and out of focus. The sound of their voices distant, hazy. She blinks, struggles. All that she knows is that there are 2 men and they seem to be holding weapons. She pulls back a bolt on her weapon. Picard eyes the warp ship.
We should have the original blueprints in the Enterprise.
There's a haul of bullets from below. Picard and Data dive for cover on the catwalks. The gunfire stops a moment. Picard calls out.
Hold your fire. We're here to help you.
Oh, shit.
Another blast of gunfire.
Captain, I believe I can handle this.
Picard nods and Data takes a few steps along the catwalk and then suddenly jumps off the side. New angle, as Data plummets 60 feet straight down and lands with a metal crash on his feet on a catwalk. He steps towards another drop-off. Lily reacts and can't believe what she just saw. Data, as he jumps again, a 40-foot drop. As Data falls, a torrent of bullets rip into his clothing and torso, until he lands on his feet a short distance away from Lily. She stares at him, open-mouthed with shock, then starts firing again. Data rocks back slightly from the impact, but is basically unharmed. The gun clicks empty. Data stares down at his smoking chest with an impassive expression, then looks at Lily.
Greetings.
Lily is thunderstruck. Data begins walking towards her. She recoils from the shocking image. Dizziness overwhelming her now, she trips, falls on the catwalk, and when her head hits metal grating, she falls unconscious. Data moves to her and carefully takes the gun out of her hand.
Captain, this woman requires medical attention.
Cut to elevator doors whooshing open. Beverly and Picard step out. Beverly rushes to Lily, bends over her unconscious form. Data is scanning the ship with a tricorder.
Severe theta radiation poisoning.
The radiation is coming from the damaged throttle assembly.
We're all going to have to be inoculated, and I need to get her to sickbay.
Picard gives her a look.
Doctor?
Please, no lectures about the Prime Directive. I'll keep her unconscious.
Very well. Tell Commander Riker to beam down with the search party. We need to find Cochrane.
Right. Crusher to Enterprise. 2 to beam directly to sickbay.
As Beverly and Lily dematerialize, Picard eyes the damaged ship.
We have less than 14 hours before the ship has to be launched. Picard to engineering.
Intercut interior engineering, a large, almost cavernous room, multi-level with a high ceiling and giant, newly designed warp core that pulses and hums with power. The many consoles are being manned by ND engineers. Geordi is looking over the pad while two engineers named Iger and Porter work nearby.
Before cheer, Captain.
Jordy, Cochrane's ship was damaged in the attack. Get down here with an engineering detail. We have some work to do.
I'm on my way, Captain.
Geordi moves into action and turns into the room.
Alpha Shift, assemble in Transporter Room 3. We're heading down to the surface.
Geordi and a group of 7 engineers head for the main doors, which open to reveal a large corridor beyond.
Porter, you're in command here until I get back.
Aye, sir.
Geordi pulls at his collar.
Take a look at the environmental controls. It's getting a little warm in here. Let's go.
Geordi heads out onto the corridor. Cut to interior missile silo night. Picard and Data stand near the cockpit of the Phoenix. ND engineers work in the background making thorough survey of the damaged warp ship. There's a quiet beat as Picard watches his men work. Then he looks at the warp ship.
Amazing. This ship used to be a nuclear missile.
It is an historical irony that Dr. Cochrane would choose an instrument of mass destruction to inaugurate an era of peace.
Picard reaches out and puts a hand on the ship itself, feeling the cool metal beneath his fingers. Data notices the look of wonder on his face. Picard notices Data watching him and smiles slightly.
What a fantasy. I must have seen this ship hundreds of times in the Smithsonian, but I was never able to touch it.
Does tactile contact alter your perception of the Phoenix?
Oh yes. For human beings, touch can connect you to an object in a very personal way. Makes it more real.
Data cocks his head at this notion, reaches out and touches the ship, mimicking Picard. Picard gives him an expectant look.
I can detect imperfections in the titanium casing, temperature variations in the fuel manifold, but it's no more real to me than it was a moment ago.
New angle, as Troy comes around the corner, stops at the odd sight of Picard and Data both stroking the side of the warp ship.
Would you 3 like to be alone?
Picard pulls his hand away. Data, with no hint of embarrassment, turns to look at her, but continues to stroke the ship absently.
Found.
There's no sign of Cochrane anywhere in the complex.
Must be nearby. This experiment meant everything to him. Start searching the community out there, and be careful. The people of this time are desperate and frightened. Not going to welcome strangers.
Understood. Captain, we should consider the possibility that Dr. Cochrane was killed in the attack.
That's true. And the future may die with him.
Interior engineering. Porter has a panel open on the upper level of engineering. Iger is standing nearby. Both are starting to sweat. What do you think?
It's like the entire environmental system's gone crazy. It's not just engineering, it's the entire deck.
Frustrated, he stares at the circuitry.
Maybe it's a problem with the EPS conduits.
He climbs up an access ladder which leads to a hatch on the ceiling. He opens the hatch and crawls inside. Interior Jeffries tube, a narrow crawlway used for maintenance. Dark, moody, hot. Porter crawls inside, starts scanning the various conduits with the tricorder. A noise. A brief skittering around coming down from the narrow tube. Porter's point of view. We watch just a glimpse of the dark form which vanishes around a corner. Porter stares in puzzlement. Did he see that or not?
Hello? Hey,
Who are you talking to?
is there anyone else doing maintenance in this section?
Not that I know of. Curious, Porter crawls down the tube, comes to an intersection where 4 tubes come together. He looks to the left and sees that the tube has been altered. Instead of the neat and orderly Starfleet technology, he is confronted by a bizarre amalgam of organic and mechanical cabling. Some of the tubes are pulsing with fluids and energy. And then behind Porter, a few feet down the tube, we see something moving. Shapes crawling towards him. Porter is unaware. Interior, main engineering. Iger standing outside the hatch, sweating profusely. He hears a thump and sickening liquid crunch from within the tube. Paul? No response. You okay in there? She climbs up the ladder. Interior Jeffries tube. As Iger slowly pokes her head into the ominous darkness, the suspenseful moment, and then a dark shape rushes at her. Off the shocking moment, cut to interior missile silo night. Picard, Riker, and Data are examining the Phoenix. Picard reacts and as he suddenly hears the distant voices of the collective again. A sense of dread and foreboding comes over the captain. The voices fade away. Troy picks up on it instantly and looks concerned.
What is it?
Crowd to Enterprise. Is everything all right up there, Mr. Wolf?
Intercut interior bridge. Worf in command standing by Hawk, who is working a console.
Yes, sir. We are experiencing some environmental difficulties on deck 16, but that is all.
What kind of difficulties?
Humidity levels have risen by 73%, and the temperature has jumped 10 degrees in the last hour.
Picard has a bad feeling about this.
Data and I attend to the ship.
Understood.
Picard turns to Riker.
Number 1, take charge down here.
I believe he said aye, sir.
As Picard and Data walk off, cut to interior sickbay. Beverly is just taking the clamshell off Lily, who is lying unconscious on the surgical table. Nurse stands by, patients and nurses in the background. The room is hot. Everyone is sweating slightly.
The damage to her cell membranes is repaired. She should be fine, but I'd like to run another test on her spinal tissues. And find out why it's so hot in here.
Suddenly, the lights flicker and go out. The monitors in the room go dead. Everyone reacts.
Now what?
Crusher to engineering.
Static on the comm. No response.
Crusher to bridge.
Nothing. Suddenly, in the dark, eerie silence, we hear strange skittering sounds just outside the ceiling and the walls. Something is out there, and they're trying to get in. Beverly grabs the tricorder and scans the walls, and reacts at the realization that it's the Borg. Interior bridge. Worf in command as Picard and Data enter. Picard is driven by the dread of what he's about to find.
Report.
We have just lost contact with Deck 16, communications, internal sensors, everything. I was about to send a security team to investigate.
No. Seal off Deck 16. Post security teams at every access point.
Aye, sir.
Worf works to his tactical console.
Mr. Hart, before we lost internal sensors, what were the exact environmental conditions in main engineering?
Atmospheric pressure was 2 kilopascals above normal, 92% humidity, 39.1 degrees Celsius.
39.1 degrees Celsius, like a Borg ship.
Everyone in the bridge freezes for a moment. A frightening thought.
We realized their ship was doomed, our shields were down, and somehow they transported here without being detected. They'll simulate the Enterprise, and then the Earth.
A chilling beat.
Guard to Riker.
Static.
Enterprise to away team respond.
More static. At that moment, the lights begin to flicker and consoles start going out one by one.
Sir, command control is being rerouted to main engineering. Weapons, shields, propulsion.
Data, quickly. Lock out the main computer.
Data rushes to a console and works the controls with android speed, his hands a blur of motion. On the monitor, we see 24th century encryption codes.
I have isolated the main computer with fractal encryption code. It is highly unlikely the Borg will be able to break it.
The lights go out, leaving only emergency lighting. Only a few consoles are left functioning.
The Borg have cut primary power to all decks except 16.
Without a computer, they won't be able to control the ship.
Borg won't stay on Deck 16.
Cut to point of view blackness. Slowly, we hear distorted sounds, the eerie skittering mixed with human voices calling out, urgent, surreal, dreamlike.
Wake up. You're all right. Come on, wake up.
The blackness begins to fade up. Images appear, human shapes, movement, and we realize we're seeing someone's point of view. As it clears, we see the face of Beverly Crusher staring down at us. We're in sickbay.
Wake up. You're all right.
New angle on Lily. She's lying in the biobed, groggy. Beverly has her by the shoulders, shaking her hard.
No.
There's no time to explain. I need you to sit up.
Lily stumbles off the bed. Patients and nurses are rushing through a small hatch in the wall, escaping into the Jeffries tube. The skittering noises are louder and all around sickbay. Bookable is scanning the doors to sickbay with a tricorder.
Alyssa.
She grabs Lily by the arm, steers her towards the Jeffries tube. Beverly glances around, desperate.
Is the EMH still online?
It should be.
The door starts to creak and buckle inward.
Take her and go. I swore I'd never use one of these things. Computer, activate the EMH program.
A holographic doctor appears. The same calm, unflappable doctor is seen on Voyager. Agua is now crawling to the Jeffries tube, helping Lily in behind her. Please state the nature of the medical emergency.
20 Borg are about to break down the door. Create a diversion.
She heads for the Jeffries tube. The doctor looks at the door, which is about to give way any second, with irritation. This isn't part of my program. I'm a doctor, not a doorstop.
Dance for them, tell them a story. I don't care. Just give us a few seconds.
By now, Beverly has helped Lily into the tube and is closing the hatch behind them. The doors blow inward. We stay on the doctors. The Borg enters off camera. We hear cybernetic whirring and clanks the Borg approaching him. According to Starfleet medical research, Borg implants can cause severe skin irritation. Perhaps you'd like an analgesic cream? Interior, Jeffries tube continuous. Agua and the others continue crawling along. Lily is directly in front of Beverly, who is bringing up the rear. The group reaches an intersection.
Which way?
Beverly scurries towards the front of the group.
Follow me. We need to get off this deck.
Everyone keeps moving. The group rounds a corner, but Lily stops, fully awake now. She's scared and completely flipped out, but she doesn't want to go with these strange people. She takes an adjacent passage and strikes out on her own. Interior, security bay. A contingent of 10 Starfleet security officers are grabbing phaser rifles out of lockers, checking them, charging them, getting them ready for the fight of their lives. Worf and Data are listening to Picard. Picard and Data are back in uniform.
First thing they'll do in engineering is establish a collective, a central point from where they'll control the hive.
Picard moves to a large display pad propped against the wall, activates it. A schematic diagram of engineering appears.
Problem is, if we begin firing particle weapons inside engineering, we risk hitting the warp core. So I believe our goal should be to puncture one of the plasma coolant tanks.
He taps a control and the view rotates and zooms in on a simple diagram of the warp core with 2 coolant tanks clearly marked with 21st century biohazard symbols.
Data.
An excellent idea. Plasma coolant will liquefy organic material on contact.
But the Borg aren't entirely organic.
No. But like any true cybernetic life form, they can't survive without their organic components.
Worf starts preparing a phaser rifle.
I have ordered all weapons to be set on rotating modulation, but the Borg will adapt quickly. We will have a dozen shots at most.
One other thing. You may encounter Enterprise crew members who have already been assimilated. Do not hesitate to fire. Believe me, you'll be doing them a favor.
Picard grabs a phaser rifle.
Let's go.
Cut to exterior missile complex. The town is starting to come back to life. People moving about, cleaning up debris, assessing the damage, eyeing the sky with worried looks, etc. There's the sound of music echoing in the night. It's coming from the tent bar we saw earlier. Interior tent bar. The futuristic jukebox seen earlier is now pounding out a rock and roll classic. It's a little too loud and the driving beat is in contrast to the emptiness of the surroundings. Troy is sitting at the bar by herself, studying the glass of liquor in front of her. She's rubbing her temples as if from a headache. After a beat, Riker enters and stops in the doorway.
Deanna? Deanna!
But the music is too loud. She can't hear him. He turns to the jukebox, which is just inside the door, finds the power cord and yanks it out of the wall. The music stops and Troy turns around.
Well, no, don't turn off the...
Crash! A bottle of liquor slams into the wall next to Riker. He spins to see Zefram Cochrane, staring at Riker with drunken outrage. He's just walked out from behind the liquor storage area.
Who is this jerk and who told him to turn off my music?
Riker looks mystified. Troy runs a hand through her hair, and we get the feeling that the short time she's met him, it's already been a strain for her to deal with him.
Will Riker? Zefram Cochrane.
Friend of yours?
Yes.
Husband?
No.
Good.
Cochrane jumps out Troy's drink, pours her another glass, and one for himself.
Now this, Dina.
Deanna.
This is the good stuff.
Riker moves towards him.
Dr. Cochrane.
Here's to the Phoenix. May she rest in peace.
He knocks back the alcohol, pounds the table a couple of times. Troy throws it back as well. Riker watches this small scene play itself out, not sure what to do. Cochrane picks up the bottle and frowns in disgust.
Okay, that was bad.
He tosses the bottle to the floor where it breaks. He stumbles back to the storage area and Troy puts her hands on her temples.
Well, I think we have to tell him the truth.
But if we tell him, the timeline could.
Timeline! There's no time to argue about time. We don't have the time. What was I saying?
Riker looks at her.
You're drunk.
I am not.
Yes, you are.
Look, he wouldn't even talk to me unless I had a drink with him, and then it took something of 3 shots of something called tequila just to find out he was the one we were looking for. And I've spent the last 20 minutes trying to keep his hands off me, so don't start criticizing my counseling technique.
Sorry.
Tori drunkenly tries to muster her dignity.
It's a primitive culture, and I'm just trying to blend in.
You're blended, all right.
I already told him our cover story. He didn't believe me.
You are getting short on time. If we do tell him the truth, you think he'll be able to handle it?
Cochrane comes out again, holding another bottle of liquor. He moves past Stryker and Troy and heads for the jukebox.
If you're looking for my professional opinion as the ship's counselor, he's nuts.
No doubt in my life.
Cochrane plugs the jukebox back into the wall. The rock and roll song heard earlier starts playing, distorted, the CD skipping. Cochrane hits the jukebox and the tune continues blaring. Cochrane drunkenly sways a chair and plops into it. Troy's head hits the bar, out cold. Off Riker's exasperated look. What's he gonna do now? Cut to exterior space, the Enterprise, in orbit of the Earth. Interior corridor. Picard, Data, and 5 security officers, team number 1, are moving down the corridor with grim looks on their faces, everyone carrying phaser rifles. The feeling is of an elite combat squad heading for a dangerous mission. They stop at one point and Data lifts up deck plate, exposing a large hatch to the floor. Interior, another corridor. Worf and 5 security officers, team number 2, in a different corridor. Worf is opening the identical hatch in the deck. He releases the locking mechanism and the hatch slides open with a soft whoosh. He glances at his men for a moment, then jumps down the hatch. Interior, deck 16 corridor. As Picard lands on his feet, the light is dim, no power on this deck, hard to see. He looks around warily for a moment, phaser at the ready, then activates the light source on his phaser rifle. He shines the light around the darkened corridor, then silently motions his arms for others to follow. Data drops down next to him as the other security officers start to drop into the corridor from the hatch above. Interior, deck 16, another corridor. Team number 2 is already spread out along the corridor. Weapons ready, everyone alert with fingers on the triggers. Worf gives a hand signal and the team begins to make their way down the hall. Picard's team moving down the hall. Data stops at an intersection, shines the light around the corner, reacts to what he sees. He motions for the team to stop, then waves Picard forward. Picard cautiously moves to Data's position and looks around the corner. New angle. Corridor directly ahead has been Borgified. The walls, ceiling, floor are now covered with a dark jungle of technology. Picard takes in a sharp breath at the sight. Data swallows, a little anxious.
Captain, I believe I am feeling anxiety. It is an intriguing sensation and most distracting.
I'm sure it's a fascinating experience, but perhaps you should deactivate your motion chip for now.
Good idea, sir.
Data tilts his head and all traces of nervousness vanish from his face.
Done.
Data, there are times I envy you.
As they move to the Borg corridor, Worf's team is already deep in their own section of Borgified corridor, moving about cautiously. Everyone is tense, jumpy. They reach the large intersection and begin to cross through it. A noise somewhere nearby. Everyone whirls. A nearby hatch is starting to open. They all take aim as the hatch opens to reveal Beverly, who is frozen at the sight of half a dozen phaser rifles with their lights all trained directly on her. She's dirty and bedraggled.
It's only me.
Everyone relaxes. Worf moves forward as Beverly crawls out.
Doctor, are you all right?
Yes, but we have wounded here.
Lopez, get these people back to deck 14.
The guard moves to help Ogawa and the other nurses' patients out of the tube.
There was a civilian with us, a woman from the 21st century. We got separated.
We'll watch for her.
She has no idea what's going on, Worf. Try and find her.
Beverly heads off with the others. Picard's team, as they round a corner, 2 Borg move past them. This is the first time we've seen a Borg up close, and it's a hair-raising moment. Everyone jumps, raises their weapons, but Picard stops them.
Wait, lower your weapons.
The Borg ignore them completely and continue moving down the hall.
They'll ignore us until they consider us a threat.
Picard and the others follow the Borg down the corridor, and soon they come to an intersection. Picard signals the team to stop. New angle looking down the street section of the corridor. Directly in front of them, about 15 yards away, are the double doors marked Main Engineering. The corridor has been Borgified. Borg drones line the walls in special alcoves. The Borg are motionless, silent, in some kind of sleeping state. The 2 Borg we've been following take up positions in their own alcoves. Picard looks up. Worf's team is arriving in an adjacent corridor.
Mr. Worf, hold this position.
With Picard and Data in the lead, the captain's team starts walking towards engineering. Worf and his guards stay in position further down the corridor. It's a long, tense walk. Although the Borg don't seem to be aware of our presence, it's unnerving to be this close. Finally, Picard and Data reach the double doors. A very tense moment as Data opens an access panel that is still visible among the Borg machinery. We can see an emergency release handle. Data grabs the handle, looks to Picard. Picard glances around at his security forces, making sure everything is in place before they open the doors. Anticipation is on everyone's face. Picard nods and Data yanks down the handle and it cracks off in his hand. The doors stay closed. A surprised moment as everyone realizes nothing has happened. Picard and Data exchange a look and the tension breaks a little.
Perhaps we should just knock.
Suddenly, the sounds of mechanical whirring and clamps are being released. The Borg emerge from their alcoves, a dozen of them. They see our security teams and move calmly towards them.
Ready phasers.
Worf and the guards raise their weapons. The Borg are getting closer.
Fire.
Worf and the guards start firing. 2 Borg are hit and go down. Another set of Borg are blasted backward, dead, but 2 more come right behind, stepping over them, expressionless, implacable, unstoppable. Picard and Data.
Data, I need cover.
Data takes up a defensive posture, shoots down the approaching Borg. Picard moves to an access panel by the doors and begins yanking out circuitry and rearranging it. The team, firing at various Borg. Various Borg are hit and fall to the deck dead. More Borg are emerging from the alcoves. No matter how many bodies pile up, the Borg just keep coming. Worf fires at a Borg. A Borg shield appears, and the Borg keeps moving.
Captain, they've adapted.
Picard is frantically adjusting circuitry. The panel fritzes and the doors jerk open slightly. Picard rushes to the doors, puts his fingers in the opening, and tries to pry the doors apart. They start to open, wider. It looks like he's going to make it inside the darkened room. A Borg leaps out from within engineering, and Picard tries to jump out of the way. Data sees Picard in trouble. Picard, the Borg closing in, certain death. Just then, Data moves into view and hurls the Borg across the corridor. The Borg goes crashing headfirst into an alcove. 3 more Borg move out of engineering and grab Data from behind. He struggles to break free, but the Borg are stronger. They start to drag him into the darkness of engineering. Picard tries to get him, but the Borg are closing in on him, blocking his way. A terrible, frustrating moment. Picard can't get to his friend. Data looks back at Picard with a stricken, plaintive look on his face, a moment frozen in time.
Captain.
In the blink of an eye, Data is pulled inside engineering and the doors clank shut behind him. Gone. Wider, a final volley of phasal blasts. Borg shields appear each time. The skirmish line is collapsing. The Borg are unstoppable now.
Regroup to Deck 15. Don't let them touch you.
What follows is the wild scramble as the team tries to get out any way they can. Up access ladders leading to the 2nd level. There are no Borg on the 2nd level. Into a Jeffries tube. Anywhere to escape. A security guard crawling into the Jeffries tube is grabbed around the neck by a Borg. Strange assimilation talons extrude from the Borg's fingers and quickly pierce his skin. Instantly, the guard stiffens as though paralyzed, and something jagged and technological spreads beneath the skin of his neck. Worf makes it to the 2nd level, helps another guard up. Picard tries to join Worf and the others, but the Borg have cut him off. He turns to run the other way, but there are Borg coming from that direction too. Trapped. He glances down. There's a Jeffries tube hatch low on the wall. He moves to it. Borg are closing in. The security guard, who was grabbed earlier, his face and neck sprout Borg technology. Assimilation has begun. Picard narrowly avoids a Borg and scrambles towards Jeffries' tube. Suddenly, a voice stops him.
Help!
Picard turns to see the security guard, who is writhing on the floor in agony, the Borg technology sticking out of his face and neck. The Borg who attacked him are gone now.
Please, help!
Picard hesitates. What is he gonna do? He raises his phaser and fires, killing the guard instantly. A grim beat, then Picard scrambles to the Jeffries tube and slides the hatch shut. Interior Jeffries tube. Picard begins scrambling through the tube, makes it to an intersection, when suddenly someone wraps an optical cord around his neck. A Borg? Picard instinctively drops his phaser and grabs at the cable around his throat. He slams his body backwards, smashing his assailant into the wall. The cable loosens around his neck and he looks up to see Lily, who lunges for the phaser, grabs it and points it directly at Picard's face. Picard freezes. Lily's eyes are wild, cloth-torn and scorched. She's almost crazed with anger, terror, confusion.
You. How did you?
He moves towards her.
Back off.
Calm down.
Shut up. Who are you?
My name is Jean.
She looks even more deadly, moves the phaser closer.
No, who are you with? What faction?
He looks at her blankly for a moment, confused by the question, then he realizes what she means.
I'm not part of the Eastern Coalition. Look, this is difficult to explain, but...
I said shut up. I don't care who you're with. Just get me the hell out of here.
It's not going to be easy.
Well, you'd better find a way to make it easy, soldier. Or I'm going to start pressing buttons.
Picard looks at her. He can see in her eyes that she means it. It's no use arguing with her. He slowly gets up and leads the way out.
Follow me.
He starts heading off down the Jeffries tube. She follows, keeping the phaser trained on him, suspicious. Close on Data's face, his eyes are closed. There's a beat. Then he eyes fly open and looks around. We pull back slightly, revealing he's lying on some kind of tabletop with metallic clamps and restraints. He tenses his arms and tries to move away, but he's unable to break the restraints. About 2 feet in front of his face, what appears to be a bulkhead. There's a cacophony of strange background noise, scratching, hisses, gurgling, liquids, odd alien hums. Suddenly, the table begins to move. It rotates, and it does so. As it does so, we realize that Data has been hanging upside down, staring at the floor. It's a disorienting moment as our perspective changes and Data rotates upright. Data's point of view, as the table gyrates, we reveal the room slowly, and we realize we're in interior engineering Borg hive. Engineering has now been fully transformed into the inner sanctum of the Borg. The room has a dark, moist, organic feel, a tropical jungle of cybernetic equipment. The walls, ceiling, and floor are now honeycombed with alcoves that make up the Borg hide. Borg drones are motionless in their alcoves, cabling and other conduits connecting them to various equipment, while other Borg are moving about the room, carrying out various modifications to the room. At one point, we glimpse the plasma coolant tanks as seen in the diagram earlier. They're nestled in a Borgified wall, well out of reach. Data is strapped to a table which is twisting and rotating, giving him frightening new glimpses of the room. A new image appears. 4 Borg drones are clustered together in one section of the room, each with an elaborate series of hoses and conduits connected to its face. Through the tubes, we can see an exchange of fluid and energy pulsing back and forth. Some sort of bizarre feeding or renewal is going on. The tubes all seem to lead towards the ceiling. Data is now horizontal on his back and the table locks into position. The Borg drones are working at a console nearby. On the monitor, we see the same encryption graphics Data used to protect the computer on the bridge. The Borg never stopped working, focuses on the breaking the code. The Borg never stops working, focused on breaking the code.
Your efforts to break the encryption code will not be successful, nor will your attempts to assimilate me into your collective.
Suddenly, a new voice is heard, echoing through the room. A woman's voice, low, seductive, deadly.
Brave words. I've heard them before from thousands of species across thousands of worlds, since long before you were created.
Data looks up towards the ceiling. A rustle of movement somewhere in the cyber tangle, almost like a snake slithering beneath the weeds. Data frowns. He saw it too, but he's not sure what to make of it.
But now they are all Borg.
Suddenly, 3 Borg drones converge on Data with various wicked-looking Borg devices.
I am unlike any life form you have encountered before. The code stored in my neural net cannot be forcibly removed.
You are an imperfect being, created by an imperfect being. Finding your weakness is only a matter of time.
One of the Borg has a specialized cybernetic arm which extrudes a series of stiletto-tipped drill spikes. The 6-inch spikes begin to bore into Data's head. Cut to exterior missile silo at night. It's cold, middle of the night. Geordi is setting up a 21st century refracting telescope, checking the angle with his tricorder. Cochrane has started Riker and Troy with a skeptical... Cochrane is staring at Riker and Troy with a skeptical and slightly drunken look.
Let me make sure I understand you correctly, Commander. A group of cybernetic creatures from the future have traveled back through time to enslave the human race, and you're here to stop them.
That's right.
Hot damn, you're heroic.
I'll prove it to you. Geordi?
These old refractors can be pretty tricky to align, but I think, yeah, there she is. Beautiful. All right, take a look.
Everyone looks at Cochrane expectantly. He moves over to the telescope, eager to get this over with. Looks into the eyepiece.
Well, what do we have here? I love a good peep show.
He trails off in shock at what he sees, pulls his head away from the telescope.
That's a trick. How'd you do that?
It's your telescope.
Cochrane checks the scope controls, then looks back through the eyepiece. Cochrane's going to view the telescope. In the viewfinder, we see a tiny but distinctive view of the Enterprise hanging against the stars. Resume, Cochrane stares at the image of the frown, with a frown, then finally turns away and gives Riker a new look.
That's our ship, the Enterprise.
And Lily's up there right now?
That's right.
Can I talk to her?
We've lost contact with the Enterprise. We don't know why yet.
He peers through the scope again, amazed.
So, what is it you want me to do?
Simple. Conduct your warp flight tomorrow morning, just as you planned.
Looks at them. He's starting to believe them. Tries to think about Phoenix, uncertain.
And why tomorrow morning?
Because 11 o'clock, an alien ship begins passing through the solar system.
Cochrane, starting to become overwhelmed by all this, takes a seat on the concrete missile doors.
More bad guys.
Good guys. They're on a survey mission. They have no interest in Earth. Too primitive.
Doctor, tomorrow morning, when you detect the warp signature from your ship, humans discovered how to travel faster than light. Decide.
What did they decide?
Oh, what?
Will, what was that?
You hear me? You hear me? Okay. Tomorrow
What did
morning,
they decide?
They're deciding something.
Doctor, tomorrow morning when you detect the warp signature from your ship and realize that humans have discovered how to travel faster than light, they can decide to alter their course and make first contact with Earth right here.
Here?
Well, actually, over there.
Riker can see that he's getting snowed under with all this. Riker moves to him and smiles, tries to ease his mind and make the sound exciting, appealing. And as our heroes tell him about the future, we can see the passion on their faces. In essence, they're selling Cochrane Star Trek, and they believe in it.
One of the most pivotal moments in human history, Doctor. You get to make first contact with an alien race. After that, everything begins to change.
Your theories on warp drive will allow fleets of starships to be built, and mankind to start exploring the galaxy.
It unites humanity in a way that no one ever thought possible. When they realize that they're not alone in the universe. Poverty, disease, war, they'll all be gone within the next 50 years.
Unless you make that warp flight tomorrow, before 11:15, none of this will happen.
Stares at them.
And you people, you're all astronauts of some kind of, on some kind of Star Trek?
Exactly. Look, Doc, I know this is a lot for you to take in, but we're running out of time here. We need your help.
Are you with us?
Cochrane considers, but what can he say?
Why not?
Everyone looks relieved. Cochrane manages a weak smile, but it's clear that he's a little uncertain about it all. He peers back through the telescope. Cochrane's point of view, the Enterprise hanging in space. Cut to interior Enterprise bridge, dark, all consoles out, lit only by a few feeble emergency lights. A security officer opens a manual hatch on the bridge and climbs up the ladder and enters. He's tired, harried, carrying a phaser rifle over his shoulder. Worf, Hawk, and a few NDs move to him. It's pretty bad, sir. Looks like the control deck 26 up to 11. But once they took back 11, they just stopped. Worf reacts in surprise.
If they have assimilated more than half the ship in just a few hours, why stop there? What is on deck 11?
Hydroponics, star cartography, deflector control, no vital systems.
They would have not stopped there unless it gave me a tactical advantage.
Worf thinks and tries to puzzle this out.
Return your checkpoint. Send reports every 10 minutes.
Right. He heads off. Interior Jeffries 2. Picard and Lily moving along. Lily still has the phaser trained on him. Her fear is being subdued by her anger. From her perspective, the war has started again and Picard is the enemy.
Something must have happened in sickbay. Where are Dr. Crusher and the others?
Why do you break the ceasefire?
They're not the ones who attacked you.
Who did?
Picard turns, opens a hatch directly in front of them, which leads into interior umbilical docking port. Picard and Lily step inside the room, which is sloped outward at a 45-degree angle.
There's a new faction that wants to prevent your launch tomorrow morning. But we're here to help you.
You want to help? Get me out of here.
This may be difficult for you to accept, but you're not Montana anymore. You're in a spaceship, orbiting Earth at an altitude of about 250 kilometers.
She looks at him for a long beat, then calmly raises the phaser a little higher and points it directly at his face.
I think it's time to start pushing buttons. What do you think?
Picard realizes he has no choice but to shock her into accepting what he's saying.
All right, you want a way out? Here it
He
is.
touches a wall panel and suddenly a huge circular portal slides open on the sloping wall, revealing space and the Earth hanging far below them. It's a dizzying sight. Lily reacts stunned, as shocked as she's ever been in her life. She takes a couple of steps away, grabs onto an outcropping as though she might fall through the opening.
What is this?
That's Australia. Guinea, Solomons. Montana should be coming up soon, but you may want to hold your breath. It's a long way down.
Lily tears her eyes away for a moment. Her entire reality is shifting beneath her feet. She looks to Picard for some kind of stability. Picard gives her his most compassionate and understanding look. He empathizes with her, knows this is a difficult moment, and he's trying to help her accept the situation and earn her trust.
Listen to me. I'm not your enemy. I can get you home, but you'll have to put this weapon down. And trust
She
me.
looks at him, and she can hear the sincerity in his words, and she sees it in his eyes, as she's beginning to waver. She backs up against the wall, nowhere else to move now. She glances between Earth and Picard, not wanting to believe what he's saying. He tries a different tactic.
Jean-Luc Picard. My name. What's yours?
Lily.
Welcome aboard, Lily.
He holds out his hand for the phaser. Lily struggles, but she just can't argue with the giant planet hanging out the window. Finally handing him the phaser, Picard takes it.
Thank you.
He checks the phaser setting and smiles a little.
Maximum setting. If you'd fire this, I would have been vaporized.
My first ray gun.
He smiles at her, and she can't help but smile back. The tension eases a little bit between them. She looks out the window one more time, and as she does, she notices something.
There's no glass.
Picard moves over and reaches for the portal and lightly taps a force field, which lights up for a moment.
Force field.
She looks amazed. He moves to the door and motions for her to follow.
I've never seen that kind of technology.
That's because it hasn't been invented yet.
What?
There's more I need to tell you. Come on.
As they head out the door, interior Borg hive. It's a while later and Data is still immobilized on the Borg operating table. His right arm and shoulder are encased in some kind of strange cybernetic shell, obscured from view. Clear tubes run out of the shell into Borg machinery. Liquid is coursing through the tubes. A couple of Borg drones are moving about the room, carrying about various tasks. The two Borg finish their work and take a few steps back and wait. Clearly, something is about to happen. We hear the voice of the mysterious woman.
Are you ready?
Data stares at the murky ceiling.
Who are you?
I am the Borg.
That is a contradiction. The Borg have a collective consciousness. There are no individuals.
Angle on the ceiling. Out of the darkness that hugs the top of the room descends the Borg Queen. She's unlike any of the Borgs we've seen. She has no body, only a head, a neck, and upper shoulders. Her face is humanoid with pale flesh, and her eyes have a silvery glint to them. Her demeanor is low and seductive, in contrast to the harsh mechanical surroundings. Below her head is the tangle of Borg technology that forms some sort of spine. She's suspended by a complex rig of cables and hydraulics. As she talks, her head and shoulders start to lower down, and we follow her.
I am the beginning, the end, the one who is many. I am the Borg.
Her head and shoulders descend into a synthetic Borg body which is standing below. The cables detach and fly away. The head clicks into place and the body animates. The Queen walks forward, now fully integrated human form. Angle on Data.
Greetings. I am curious. Do you control the Borg collective?
You imply a disparity where none exists. I am the collective.
Data tilts his head, puzzled by the cryptic answer.
Perhaps I should rephrase the question. I wish to understand the organizational relationships. Are you their leader?
I bring order to chaos.
An interesting, if cryptic, response.
You are chaos, Data. You are the contradiction, a machine who wishes to be human.
Since you seem to know so much about me, you must be aware that I am programmed to evolve, to better myself.
We too are on a quest to better ourselves, evolving toward a state of perfection.
Forgive me, but the Borg do not evolve. They conquer.
By assimilating other beings into our collective, we are bringing them closer to perfection.
She smiles and stares at him intensely, and we get the hint that her interest in Data may go beyond simple assimilation.
Somehow, I question your motives.
That's because you haven't been properly stimulated yet.
The Queen looks at him, and we hear a servo work in Data's head. Data reacts with sudden fear. He abruptly pulls it under control.
You have reactivated my emotion chip. Why?
Don't be frightened.
I am not frightened.
The Queen looks at the cybernetic shell that is encasing Data's right arm, which opens at her silent command. Angle on Data's arm. We can now see that all of the skin has been removed from his right arm, showing the inner workings of his android limb, circuitry and servos, etc. On top of the mechanical forearm, there is something new, a small patch of human flesh held in place with various nasty-looking hooks and clamps and small tubes carrying blood. It's a delicate, fragile piece of organic life in an ugly mechanical surface. Angle on Data. He looks down at the patch of flesh with a rising sense of dread.
Do you know what this is, Data?
It would appear you are attempting to graft organic skin onto my endoskeletal structure.
What a cold description for such a beautiful gift.
She smiles slightly, utterly confident. She leans her face in close to Data's still immobilized right arm. Extreme close-up on Data's arm. We are so close to the patch of flesh we can see the individual hairs. The Borg Queen's lips move into frame and she exhales a long and sensuous breath. We see goosebumps form on the skin and the hair stand straight up in response. New angle as Data's eyes widen as he looks up in the skin, surprised. This is a sensation he's never felt before. The Borg Queen sees the look on his face and smiles.
Was that good for you?
Data can barely describe the sensation, but clearly it was pleasurable. He doesn't know what to say. Off his confused and disturbed look, we cut to interior corridor. Dimly lit but deserted but not yet Borgified, Picard drops down from the hatch in the ceiling and looks around, phaser in hand, then signals for Lily to follow. She drops down the deck and they start walking cautiously down the hall. Their relationship has progressed since we last saw them. Picard has told Lily about the future and her curiosity has been piqued. She wants to know more, and while Picard still has the responsibility of getting them safely to the bridge, he's responding to her as well. We get the feeling there might have been closer friendship between them if the circumstances had been different. Picard stops at an active computer panel on the wall and hits a few controls.
How many planets are in this federation?
Over 150, spread across 8,000 light years.
You must not get home much.
Actually, I tend to think of the ship as home. But if it's Earth you're talking about, I try to get back when I
The
can.
message "Access Denied" appears, and Picard looks a little relieved.
Good. They haven't broken the encryption codes yet.
Ooh, those bionic zombies you told me about? The
Borg.
Borg. Sounds Swedish.
He gives her a look. They keep moving. Picard thinking, trying to formulate a plan, while Lily tries to keep the conversation alive to keep her nerves steady. She glances around.
How big is this ship?
24 decks, almost 700 meters long.
It took me 6 months to scrounge up enough titanium just to build a 4-meter cockpit. How much did this thing cost?
Economics of the future are somewhat different. Money doesn't exist in the 21st century.
No money? You don't get paid?
The acquisition of wealth is no longer a driving force in our lives. We work to better ourselves and the rest of humanity. Actually, quite like you and Dr. Cochran.
She looks at him and bursts out laughing. Picard isn't sure what exactly he said that was so funny. As they round a corner...
What?
They round the corner and Lily stops, the laughter changing to a gasp, and Picard turns to see... New angle. Directly ahead is a stretch of Borgified corridor. There's a dozen Borg in their alcoves lining the walls. Several Borg walking around working. They've just walked into a den of wolves. Lily's instinct is to flee, but Picard grabs her by the arm.
All right. They won't attack unless we threaten them. Come on.
Isn't there another way around?
He holsters his phaser and takes her by the hand.
I know what I'm doing.
They start walking through the Borgified corridor. Borg move about them, almost touching them, but ignoring them completely. Picard eyes them warily. Lily tries to keep a grip on her rising panic. Mechanical words and gurgling sounds swirl around her, nightmarish. A Borg suddenly jolts out of its alcove as though to attack. Lily recoils, but the Borg simply walks past her and goes on its way. Another Borg brushes up against her. Yet another almost walks into them, and Picard has to pull her out of the way. It's the longest walk of her life. Picard stays focused on getting them through without disturbing the Borg, when suddenly he starts to hear the voices of the Borg collective in his head again. It's not a good time. He concentrates, shakes his head slightly to push the voices out, and after a moment, they eventually fade away. He presses on, and finally the Borgified section of the hallway ends and they move out to the Federation corridor. Picard looks down at the adjacent corridor and sees something at the far end and gets an idea. Lily glances back at the Borg with dread and anxiety.
Definitely not Swedish.
Picard pulls out his phaser and fires a Borg conduit, which explodes into a shower of sparks. Instantly, two Borg turn and start walking toward Picard and Lily.
What the hell are you doing?
Picard doesn't answer. Grabs her hand and heads down the holodeck corridor. They stop outside the large set of double doors, and Picard hits a control and the doors whoosh open. Interior holodeck grid. The doors slide shut behind them in what appears to be a completely empty dark room. The room is lit only by a small glowing computer panel. Picard rushes the wall panel, starts working it. A slithering scrape on the outside of the doors announces the arrival of the Borg. Picard looks Lily up and down.
Well, sounds like it's set.
Off her puzzled look, interior corridor, the two Borg drones physically force the doors open with their cybernetic strength. There's a shriek of metal as the doors open and the Borg rush inside for the kill. Interior, 1940s nightclub, entryway. The Borg have just stepped into a scene from a film noir detective novel. A long stretch of corridor lined with empty red booths and a couple of late-night drinkers. The Borg stand still for a moment, trying to orient themselves to this unexpected setting. They enter the corridor and start walking toward the far end of the hall. Interior nightclub, ballroom. Huge and opulent, there's a bar, bandstand and dance floor, dining tables, etc. It's near closing time. A few patrons in period garb are having late night drinks, chatting, smoking, etc. Busboys are clearing the tables. The band is packing up for the night. New angle on Picard and Lily. Picard is dressed up as Dixon Hill, a hard-boiled detective character. Lily in a slinky satin dress. He's leading Lily through the scene, and Lily is still in a state of shock, letting Picard lead her through this bizarre scene. Picard finally sees a bartender behind the main bar cleaning some glasses, and he calls out,
Hey.
Dixon?
Picard heads for the bar, but before they can reach, a drunken patron walks up.
Hey, beautiful, how about a drink?
He gives Lily a vicious pat on the butt. She instantly gives him a backhanded slap across the face, and Picard steps in.
Hands off, Boston. She's with me.
The drunk staggers off, and they keep moving. Lily rubs her hand.
I thought you said none of this was real.
It's not. They're all holograms.
Sure felt real.
Interior nightclub entryway. The two Borg are nearly at the entrances to the main ballroom when the officious Mater D walks up to them. The Borg should not be able to see into this ballroom yet. I'm sorry, gentlemen, but we're closing. The Borg make no move to leave, and the Mater D looks annoyed. And you understand we have a strict dress code, so if you boys don't leave right now, One of the Borg grabs the Mater D by the collar, hauls him close, sends out a thin laser beam from his eyepiece. The Mater D fritzes out slightly, revealing him to be a hologram. Interior nightclub ballroom. Picard and Lily are approaching the bartender.
What'll be, Diggs? The usual?
Looking for Nicky the Nose.
The nose. He hasn't been here in months.
Picard stops, puzzled. This wasn't the answer he was expecting. At that moment, Picard suddenly sees the Mater D come tumbling out of the entryway and crash into a waiter. Picard has to think fast.
The wrong chapter. Computer, begin chapter 13.
Wider angle. The room remains the same, as do Picard and Lily, but the room suddenly fills with patrons. The band is playing, waiters moving about, a new chapter in the Holo program. The club is in full swag on Saturday night. Picard and Lily are in the middle of the dance floor, which is filled with people dancing who effectively hide them from the view of the Borg. Picard grabs Lily and starts to dance.
Try to look like you're having a good time.
She glances toward the Borg, who are starting to move through the crowd, looking for Picard and Lily.
No, look at me and try to act naturally.
He gives her his most winning smile, projecting a look of utter confidence. Lily smiles back, forced, strained.
Come here often?
The Borg moving methodically through the crowd. Picard and Lily are dancing their way toward a far side of the room.
You're not bad.
Picard smiles slightly and then sees someone.
There he is.
Picard's point of view, sitting at one of the large booths lining the wall, is Nicky the Nose. He's a fat mobster wearing a metal nose. His henchman is sitting across from him. Picard and Lily start dancing towards the mobster. A woman suddenly grabs Picard and plants a long kiss on his lips. She's a femme fatale named Ruby.
Ruby, this isn't a good time.
He tries to pull away, but she won't let go.
It's never a good time for us, is it, Dix? Always some excuse, some case you're working on?
Yeah, I gotta talk to Nicky. I'll see you later on.
Okay, but watch your caboose and dump the broad.
He finally breaks away and heads for the mobster's table. The Borg are working their way through the crowd, getting closer. Picard and Lily reach the mobster's table.
Well, 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 look what the cat dragged in. What's shaking, Dix?
Picard quickly moves to the booth and starts patting down the henchman, looking for a gun. The henchman looks at him puzzled.
Usual, Nick. Martinis and skirts. Excuse me.
Hey, I'm gonna start taking this personal in a second.
No gun. The Borg are getting closer. Picard finally sees a violin case sitting next to the henchman. He lunges for it. The henchman grabs Picard, but Lily slams him with the champagne ice bucket. He topples in a shower of ice. Picard pops open the violin case and whips out a Tommy gun. He whirls it in the face of the Borg and pulls back on the bolt on the gun and opens fire. Bullets rip into the Borg, tables, patrons screaming and diving for cover. People are running out the doors. The expression on Picard's face is ferocious as he pumps the two Borg full of bullets. The drones finally crash to the floor, twitching and smoking. Picard's gun clicks empty. He walks over to the Borg, looks down at them with an expression of loathing on his face. Lily walks up next to him. They stare at the dead Borg for a moment.
I think you got him.
Picard ignores her, kneels down next to one of the dead Borg. The nightclub is almost totally empty now. He begins to open a panel of the Borg's abdomen.
I don't get it. You said this was all a bunch of holograms. If the gun isn't real.
Disengage the safety protocols. Without them, even a holographic bullet can kill.
He reaches his arm deep inside the alien circuitry. He treats the dead Borg with more care than he would an open computer console.
What are you doing?
Looking for the neuroprocessor. Every Borg has one. It's like a memory chip. It'll contain a record of the instructions this Borg has been receiving from the collective.
Lily kneels down on the other side of the Borg, watching with little revulsion as Picard digs through its insides. She notices that the Borg is wearing remnants of the Starfleet uniform.
Jean-Luc, that's one of your uniforms.
Picard doesn't even look up.
This was Ensign Lynch.
He rips out a hunk of circuitry, plucks off a small, distinctive Borg chip. He pulls up the tricorder and places the chip in the open slot in the back of it. Hits a control and the slot adjusts to fit the chip. Lily glances back at the Borgified ensign.
Tough break.
Got to get to the bridge.
His tone of voice and complete lack of compassion makes Lily look up at him. This is not the same man who was so interesting and charming in the corridor a few minutes ago. Off Picard's icy expression, he heads to the exit. Cut to exterior missile complex, wide daybreak. Our first look at the sprawling Montana landscape in daylight. The tent city is situated on a mountain slope, the missile silo below it. In the distance, we can see that the forest in this area has been burned away in a devastating fire. Townsfolk are milling about. Huge craters from the Borg attack are still giving off thin wisps of smoke. Exterior missile complex. Cochrane is walking from the town to the missile complex. A group of young Starfleet officers dressed in 21st century garb pass by. The officers glance up, see him, and give looks of awe. To the officers, Cochrane is a towering figure from history. Cochrane frowns a bit, but he's not used to getting these starry-eyed looks. It makes him uncomfortable. He tries to find some privacy behind a large structure near the silo. He reaches inside his jacket, pulls out a small flask, and takes a long pull from it.
Doctor.
He whirls around, hiding the flask.
Yeah.
Will you take a look at this?
Pockets the flask and moves over to Geordi, who's standing nearby holding a pad. Geordi hands it to him.
I tried to reconstruct the intermix chamber from what I remember in school. Tell me if I got it right.
He's getting agitated. The more he hears about his role in history, the less he likes about it.
School? You learned this in school?
Yeah. Basic warp drive design is a required course at the Academy. The first chapter is called Zephram Cochrane.
He glances at the pad.
Well, looks like you got it right.
Sorry, my computer freaked out. Hold on. Geordi smiles, satisfied. Lieutenant Barclay walks up. Barclay keeps glancing at Cochrane nervously, excited to be this close to the legend.
Commander, this is what we're thinking of using to replace the damaged warp plasma conduit.
He hands Geordi a large section of copper tubing. Close on Geordi's eyes, Geordi looks at it, his pupils dilate and pixelate. Cochrane watches, unsettled but fascinated.
Fine, but you got to reinforce the copper tubing with the nanopolymer.
He hands the tube back to him. Barclay hesitates before he goes and gives Cochrane an excited look.
Dr. Cochrane, I know this sounds silly, but can I shake your hand?
Cochrane gives him a forced smile and lets Barclay eagerly pump his hand for a moment.
Thank you, Doctor. I can't tell you what an honor it is to be working with you on this project. I never imagined I'd be meeting the man who invented warp drive. I mean, it's a...
Reg.
He stops.
Oh, right. Sorry. Thank you.
Cochrane nods uncomfortably. Thrilled, Barclay walks off. Geordi and Cochrane start walking.
Do they have to keep doing that?
It's just a little hero worship, Doc. I can't say that or blame them. We all grew up hearing about what you did here, or what you're about to do here. And you know, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I went to Zephram Cochrane High School.
Oh, really?
There's a trace of fear in his voice that Geordi doesn't pick up on. They stop, and Cochrane runs his hand through his hair, trying not to think about his place in history. He looks around the landscape and Jordy laughs.
I wish I had a picture of this.
What?
Well, in the future, this whole area becomes a historical monument. You're standing in almost the exact spot where your statue is going to be.
Jordy is beaming. This is one of the high points of his entire life.
Statue?
Yeah, it's marble, about 20 meters tall.
Jordy imitates a pose.
You're looking up at the sky. Your hand is sort of reaching toward the future.
Cochrane stares back with a smile that could be described as horrified. He wants to end this conversation.
I have to take a leak.
Jordy looks around the missile doors, concerned.
A leak? I'm not detecting any leak.
Don't you people ever pee in the 24th century?
Oh, leak. I get it. That's pretty funny.
Excuse me.
And quickly walks towards the wood. Jordy watches him for a moment and then turns and heads down into the silo. New angle as Cochrane walks a short distance away from the silo and takes a few deep breaths, happy to be alone for a moment. Then glances back to make sure no one's followed him. Ephraim Cochrane takes off running into the forest as fast as he can. Exterior Montana, bird's eye view. Cochrane comes running out of the woods and into a vast burn area, off the image of the tiny figure lost in the sea of dead trees, hoping not to be seen as he crosses towards some distant green forest. Cut to interior Jeffrey's tube. Picard and Lily are stopped outside the hatch, which Picard is manually opening. A beat, then the hatch slides aside, and Picard finds himself at the business end of a phaser rifle. 3 phaser rifles. Picard's point of view, Worf, Hawk, and Beverly relax as they realize it's him.
I'm Klingon. I'm Klingon?
Are you Klingon? Are you?
Am I?
I don't know.
I mean, the door was open. I mean, that's what I expect.
Worf, Hawk, and Beverly relax as they realize it's him.
Captain.
They lower the rifles and Worf gives Picard a hand up. Interior bridge. As Picard crawls out of the tube, the bridge is still dark and there are some open consoles where NDs are laboring to bring them back online.
Jean-Luc, we thought you were...
Reports of my assimilation have been greatly exaggerated. I found something you lost.
Picard climbs out of the tube and we see Lily behind him. Worf reaches down to pull her onto the bridge. Lily reacts to the sight of the towering Klingon.
I'm Klingon.
Lily nods. Picard and Worf move aside to discuss tactical matters, and Lily looks around the bridge, wondrous.
Report.
The Borg control over half the ship. We've been trying to restore power to the bridge and the weapon systems, but we've been unsuccessful.
Picard reacts to the grim news.
We have another problem. I accessed a Borg neuroprocessor, and I've discovered what they're trying to do. They're transforming the deflector dish into an interplexing beacon.
Interplexing?
Kind of subspace transmitter. If they activate the beacon, they'll establish a link with the Borg living in this century.
But in the 21st century, the Borg are still in the Delta Quadrant.
They'll send reinforcements. Humanity would be an easy target. Attack Earth in the past to assimilate the future.
An unsettling beat.
We must destroy the deflector dish before they activate the beacon.
Can't get to the deflector control, or we can't get to the deflector control or a shuttlecraft.
He gets an idea.
Mr. Worf, do you remember your zero-G combat training?
Worf looks a little wary at the suggestion.
I remember it made me sick to my stomach. What are you suggesting?
I think it's time we went for a little stroll.
Cut to exterior Montana woods. Riker and Geordi are moving through the sun-dappled forest, scanning for tricorders. Starfleet NDs are spread out and moving through the forest. Everyone's searching for Cochrane. Geordi stops and reacts to his tricorder.
There's a humanoid life sign ahead. 500 meters.
Cochrane?
Geordi looks up and his eyes pixelate in a strange effects. Geordi's point of view, a digitalized view of the forest which zooms in on a distant thermal signature until finally the signature gets large and clear enough to see it's a man making his way through the trees. As we watch, the man pauses for a moment, pulls something out of his jacket, and takes a swig.
It's him, all right.
Riker signals to the rest of the team and they all move out in that direction. Cut to interior airlock. Picard, Worf, and Hawk are pulling on spacesuits. The suits are form-fitting, sleek, no bulky oxygen tanks. The helmets are the same. They conform to the contours of the skull and face. Worf is handing Picard and Hawk a phaser rifle.
I have remodulated the pulse emitters, but I don't believe we will get more than 1 or 2 shots before the Borg adapt.
We'll just have to make those shots count. Magnetize?
Each of them touches a small control pad on the thigh of their suit. A green light appears on each of their boots, and we hear a metallic chunk as the boots are magnetized.
Ready.
Worf and Hawk nod. A Starfleet ND goes to a wall panel and activates the control. The airlock door seen earlier opens. Picard turns to Lily.
Watch your caboose sticks.
I intend to.
Picard, Worf, and Hawk enter the airlock and an ND closes the door behind them. Cut to exterior space, the Enterprise. The rounded underbelly of the saucer section hangs above us, a vast landscape of metal with the Earth and stars looming beyond. 3 tiny figures are climbing the far rise, walking towards us upside down. They're backlit by Earth and cast long shadows across the whole. Our heroes, Picard, Worf, and Hawk. Close on them, we see only their upper bodies hanging upside down in the frame. Worf is breathing heavily, getting space sick.
Worf, how are you doing?
Not good.
Try not to look at the stars. Keep your eyes on the hole.
Worf looks down, which is up to us. Worf's point of view, looking down at his boots on the hole in the Enterprise. His breathing slows, and the point of view tilts up, and as it does, we see the expanse of the ship laid out before us, right side up for the first time. It's a dizzying sight. The deflector disc is not visible from this position. Close on Picard, Worf, and Hawk, looking down on them, standing on the hole.
Let's go.
High angle, the 3 men begin walking forward on the massive hole. Cut to interior Borg hive. Data is strapped to the surgical table, 2 Borg drones still working on his body. The process of adding flesh to Data has progressed. His right arm and part of his face are now amalgam of android circuitry and human flesh. The Borg Queen emerges from a dark region of the room, glances over the progress, pleased.
Tell me, are you using a polymer-based neurorelay to transmit the organic nerve impulses to the central processor of my positronic net?
One of the drones briefly removes one of the restraints holding Data's right android arm. The drone quickly reattaches it. Data takes note of this, his mind working, but he doesn't stop talking for even a second.
If that is the case, how have you solved the problem of increased signal degradation inherent to the organosynthetic transmission across
Do you always talk this much?
Not always, but often.
Why do you insist on utilizing this primitive linguistic communication? Your android brain is capable of so much more.
Have you forgotten? I am endeavoring to become more human.
Human. We used to be exactly like them. Flawed, weak, organic. But we evolved to include the synthetic, and now we use both to attain perfection. Your goal should be the same as ours.
Believing oneself to be perfect is often a sign of a delusional mind.
Small words from a small being trying to attack what he doesn't understand.
I understand that you have no real interest in me, that your goal is to obtain the encryption codes for the Enterprise computer.
Over the next speech, the drone opens a restraint on Data's android arm for a brief instant.
That is one of our goals, but in order to reach it, I am willing to help you reach yours.
Data seizes the moment. He breaks off the restraint with his arm and knocks the Borg aside with an android strength. He then quickly hits a control which releases the other restraints. The Borg drones move to Data, but he is now on his feet. Data grabs one of them with his android arm, flinging the drone across the room. He kicks another, sending him flying. The Queen moves to get out of the way, tilts her head in a silent command. Data makes the dash for the door, but stops when a Borg force field flashes into view, trapping him. He turns to run the other way, but a third drone slashes at Data, who instinctively raises his right arm to ward off the blow. And as he does, the Borg claw rips into the new flesh of Data's forearm. Data's eyes go wide in a mixture of surprise and pain. He gasps, cradles his arm to his body, and stops. He's shocked, rooted to the spot. The Borg drones move in for the kill, but the Queen raises her hand and they all freeze in place. For one timeless moment, Data stands in the middle of the room, holding his bleeding arm, the emotions of shock, wonder, and pain moving across his face.
Is it becoming clear to you yet?
The Borg Queen moves towards him. Data cradles his arm, rubbing it, caressing it, holding it in a way that he's never treated his body.
Look at yourself, standing there, cradling the new flesh I've given you. If it means nothing to you, why protect it?
I am simply imitating the behavior of humans.
You're becoming more human all the time, Data. Now you're learning to lie.
My programming was not designed to process these sensations.
Then tear the skin from your limb like you would a defective circuit. Go ahead, Data. We won't stop you. Do it. Don't be tempted by flesh.
Data hesitates, reaches at one of the top edges of his new skin, but can't quite bring himself to tear it away. The Queen moves close to him, face to face. She lightly strokes a portion of his cheek, which is now human flesh.
Are you familiar with physical forms of pleasure?
If you are referring to sexuality, I am fully functional and have been programmed in multiple techniques.
How long has it been since you've used them?
8 years, 7 months, 16 days, 4 minutes, and 22...
Far too long.
She drops her hand and stares into his eyes. Data looks confused, struggling. She kisses him. Data reacts surprise, and then a tranquil look caresses his face as he submits to the inevitable. And we see Data's hand move to the small of the Queen's back. A subtle gesture, but it seems as though Data has made his choice. Cut to exterior space, the deflector array, an angle from inside the spoon looking towards a sloping dish. 3 heads rise into view, Picard, Worf, and Hawk. As they peer over the lip, they all react in shock. Their point of view, the deflector dish. The giant glowing dish is about 50 yards away and covered with 6 Borg who are working to modify the dish. A large, multifaceted crystalline structure has been erected in the middle of the dish, Borg technology. Close on Picard's face as he studies the alien structure. Picard's point of view, a closer shot of the Borg technology. It is 12 isolinear spires, 6 of which are stationary and pointing straight up. The other 6 can swing up or down and are currently in the down position. The Borg are working on their stationary spires, and we can see that they're wearing special harnesses which in turn are holding cylindrical power tubes. As we watch, Borg number 1 takes the power tube out of the Borg number 2's harness and then places it on the top of one of the stationary spires. This action causes the spire to light up. The other Borg are working in the background, scanning the dish with their Borg-armed devices, attaching thick black hoses to the base of the dish or preparing power tubes for installation. Picard, Worf, and Hawk, as before, watching, all surprised at seeing the Borg out here.
We should bring reinforcements.
There's no time. It looks like they're building the beacon right over the particle emitter.
We set our phasers to full power.
No. Can't risk hitting the dish. It's charged with antiprotons. We destroy half the ship. We need another way.
Off Picard's face, his mind working. How are they going to handle this? Cut to exterior Montana woods. Cochrane is climbing up a steep incline, breathing heavily, out of shape, and a little drunk. He sees something up ahead, stops with alarm. Cochrane's point of view, a little hazy, standing amongst a group of trees, dark figures watching them. A Starfleet engineer. Cochrane turns to run the other direction and stops. Another Starfleet officer. He whirls to run the other way and finds himself face to face with Riker and Geordi.
Still looking for the bathroom?
I'm not going back.
Doc, we can't do this without you.
I don't care. I don't want a statue.
Riker takes a step towards him.
Doctor.
Get away from me.
Cochrane runs wildly through the trees. Riker and Geordi exchange a look.
We don't have time for this.
He pulls out his phaser, aims, and fires at Cochrane. He's stunned and falls to the forest floor. Riker and Geordi move to him, look down his unconscious form with a mixture of sadness and irritation. Riker looks at Geordi.
You told him about the statue?
Exterior Enterprise hull, a Borg. Mindless drone working at the deflector dish. The Borg pulls a power tube off his neighbor, and as he does, he notices something off camera. New angle, Borg perspective. Picard and Worf are walking along the slope of the deflector dish in the background. The Borg take note of them, but turns back to his work, ignoring them as he attaches the tube to the top of the stationary spire. The spire lights up, and now we see that there are 3 stationary tubes lit. Hawk has reached his position at the top of the deflector array. Worf is approaching his own point at the side of the dish when he stops and starts to get dizzy. He puts a hand on his stomach. Picard has reached his own point when he notices Worf getting ill.
Mr. Worf, You're not going to vomit in there. That's an order.
Aye, sir.
Hawk kneels down, pops open a deck plate labeled Maglock Portal 1, revealing a complex web of Starfleet circuits and controls. Borg number 1 is attaching a power tube on one of the spires when Hawk's actions at the Maglock cause him to react. He stops working for a moment and looks at Hawk. There's a beep, and then the Borg number 1 attaches the tube, lights the spire, and then leaves the dish and heads for Hawk. Worf has just opened his own deck plate, Maglock Portal 3, and begins working. Borg number 2 now reacts to Worf's actions by stopping his work and looking at Worf. Borg number 2 is in the middle of attaching a black hose to the base in one of the spires, and now he has to deal with Worf. Borg number 3 is raising a swing arm spire to the up position when he stops and looks over at Picard, who we can see is now also working on his own open panel. Borg number 3 works quickly with Borg number 4 to lock the spire into place. Borg number 4 is a very distinct and unique look. Borg number 3 attaches the power tube to the upright swing arm and thus lights the spire. And now he moves towards Picard. Hawk is working controls, a shadow falls over his face, and he looks up to see Borg number 1 is almost on top of him. Hawk quickly aims his phaser rifle and fires. The Borg is blasted backwards, goes skidding across the hole in a shower of sparks. Hawk quickly goes back to work. Borg number 4, who was helping number 3, now turns and sees that Hawk has killed number 1. But before he can leave, Borg number 4 must now allow number 6 to quickly remove a power tube from number 4's harness. Borg number 6 will use this tube to power another swing arm that has been moved into place. Borg number 4 now heads for Hawk. As number 4 leaves, another stationary spire is lit in the background. Worf, Borg number 2 is getting closer. Worf reaches into the circuitry and grabs hold of the hydraulic lever, pulls it out and twists it. We hear a rumbling clank and the hiss of large clamp depressurizing somewhere deep within the ship.
The magnetic constrictors are designated.
Worf stands and fires at Borg number 2. A Borg shield comes up. His weapon is useless.
They've adapted.
He lets go of his rifle and it floats into space. He backs away from the approaching Borg number 2, giving them some room to fight. Picard, working frantically. Borg number 3 is almost on top of him. Suspense. What now? He pulls up his phaser rifle, aims in the section of the hole between him and the Borg, then fires, blowing a large hole on the deck plate. The explosion sets off a huge, powerful jet of gaseous vapor which vents out into space like a fire hose. It blows Borg number 3 into space. The deflector dish. The 3 remaining Borg are still working. Another stationary spire lights up, and it's clear that once they are all lit, the beacon will be active. It's a race against time. At the moment, 6 stationary spires and 2 swing arms are active. Borg number 5 now stops working on the dish in reaction to Borg number 3 being blown into space. Number 5 now heads for Picard. Worf stops moving when he feels he has had enough room to make a stand. Picard is working. He glances up in time to see number 4 is almost on top of Hawk. But Hawk's back is turned and he doesn't see the Borg coming.
Hawk.
The distant figure of Hawk turns, but it's too late. The Borg starts attacking him, pulls him down out of view. Picard reacts. There's nothing he can do. Worf watches defiantly as Borg number 2 reaches out for him, but just before the Borg hand grabs his suit, Worf whips out a batless sword, which is hidden on his back. He slashes the Borg's forearm, severs the shower of spark and floating blood. The forearm begins to float away, but it is tethered to his body by a piece of tubing. The Borg lunges at him. Worf spins away, but as he does, the Borg tears a piece of Worf's suit on his leg. Oxygen and atmosphere start hissing out into his spacesuit. Worf plunges a sword into the Borg's neck. The Borg starts convulsing with a terrible cybernetic shriek and dies. The Borg's feet remain magnetized to the hole, and his body drifts ghoulishly in the weightless environment. Close on Worf, as his breathing becomes labored, barely conscious in his suit vents air.
Warning.
Warning, decompression in 45 seconds.
Borg number 5 is making its way around the spewing gas towards Picard. There are now only 3 spires left to go before they will all be lit. One of the swing arms was raised into position in the lit OC during the previous sequence. Picard grabs a hold of the hydraulic lever, pulls it out, and twists it. A loud clang and hiss is heard somewhere deep in the ship. Close on Maglock monitor, a small screen down deep in the controls is flashing, cycle incomplete. Picard glances up, sees that Worf is standing adrift, feet still attached to the hole, nearly unconscious, his suit spewing vapor. It looks like Worf is a goner, and there's nothing Picard can do. Picard looks up where Hawk was stationed. Picard's point of view, the portal where Hawk was working is still open, and Borg number 4 reappears from over the lip of the hole and heads back for the dish, but there's no sign of Hawk. Close on deflector dish, one of the 3 final remaining Insolinar spires come alive. Time is running out. Picard turns towards Borg number 5, which has now walked around the venting gas and is coming towards him. Picard takes a couple of steps backward, back against the slope of the array. He's trapped. There's no way for him to get past the Borg. Borg number 5 raises an arm and we see one of the whirring saw-like devices at the end. Certain death for Picard. Picard, looking around wildly for some way past the Borg, he suddenly gets an idea. Reaches down and hits the magnetic control on his thigh. The green light goes out and we hear the sound of his boots being demagnetized. For the terrifying instant, he begins lifting off into space. New angle. As Picard kicks off the side of the wall with full force, he launches himself toward the far side of the deflector. Wider, as Picard hurtles himself through space, twisting and turning out of control as he goes over the head of the Borg. Picard's point of view, soaring through space and heading directly for the spewing gas from the hole in the hull. We fly right through the vapor. Wider, Picard spinning wildly through the air toward the other side of the dish. Close angle, top of the deflector array, as Picard crashes into the hole. He scrambles for a handhold, then magnetizes his boots again. Picard reaches down the open access panel where Hawk was working and activates a final series of controls, grabs the hydraulic lever, pulls and twists. We hear the clank and hiss of clamps being released. The deflector dish. Around the perimeter of the dish, we see a series of explosive bolts start to blow sequentially. The Borg on the dish look around to see what's happening. Wider, as the deflector dish begins separating from the ship. After a moment, it stops 4 feet above, still tethered to the ship by a pillar of power cables. The 2 Borg keep working, faster now. Another spire lights up. Only one more left. Picard reaches for Hawk's abandoned rifle, preparing to cut the dish loose. But behind Picard, we see Hawk rise into view. Picard catches the movement out of the corner of his eye and turns. Close on Hawk's faceplate, which is obscured by a reflection of Earth, as he turns, the reflection clears to reveal the now partially Borgified face of Hawk. He lunges at Picard, and the 2 men begin struggling in the hole. Picard struggling against the superior strength of Borg Hawk, who forces Picard on his back. Borg number 5 sees that Picard is being taken care of by Borg Hawk, and so Borg number 5 tries to climb up the power cables to reach the dish and help complete the work. Picard. Hawk smashes his first fist into Picard's faceplate. The glass starts to crack under the blow. Hawk raises his arm for one final punch, then the phaser blast comes in from OC and blasts into his chest, blowing him backwards, tumbling off the void of space. Worf, who is on his feet and has just fired his weapon at Hawk. He's all right. Just below his knee, a makeshift tourniquet is wrapped tightly around his leg, effectively staunching the flow of gas from the suit. A Borg hand dangles into view, and we realize the tourniquet has been made from the severed arms-long tubing. It's a peculiar sight. Close on the deflector dish, one of the Borg on the beacon finally completes his work, and the final spire lights up. Suddenly, all 12 spires begin to go on and off in sequence. This pattern of lights goes around and around all 12 spires. At the same time, an identical pattern of lights begin to flash the same sequence underneath the floating dish. Both sets of light continue to flash faster and faster. Picard aims his rifle and fires at the tether. The power cables holding the dish to the ship are severed with showers of sparks. The dish starts to float away from the ship. 2 Borgs are still on the dish, and Borg number 5 is still holding one of the dangling cables. Closer angle, the Borg on the dish. Stops working, the lights floating the dish go out. The beacon is powerless. Picard reacts. Wide angle, the dish floating away from the ship, a good 50 feet away. Worf raises his rifle and takes aim.
Assimilate this.
He fires. Wider, as the deflector dish explodes in a titanic blast of fire and debris. Worf smiles in victory and looks at Picard. Picard relieved, smiles in return. They did it! High angle looking down as Picard and Worf head off in the direction they came. It's a moment of triumph. Interior Borg Hive. 3 Borg drones are huddled over Data, working on him, but we can't see exactly what they're doing. The Borg Queen steps up to the unseen Data, watching the work with a grim look.
We've had a change of plans, Data.
Cut to exterior Montana missile silo, as before. Interior Phoenix cockpit. 3 astronaut couches lying on their backs facing a control panel in a row of windows. There are switches, dials, readouts all around the cockpit. An extremely complex setup. Cochrane is sitting in the pilot's seat, running over a few checks on the controls in front of him. Through the open door, we see a Starfleet security guard watching his every move. Cochrane glances at him, gives him a fake smile. He looks beaten, resigned to his fate, but not happy about it. After a moment, Riker climbs into the cockpit.
We only got an hour to go, Doc. How are you feeling?
I have a 4-alarm hangover, either from the whiskey or your laser beam or both. But I'm ready to make history.
Riker can't help but smile. Cochrane is wacky, but likable.
Troy to Commander Riker.
Riker here?
Intercut. Interior missile silo control room. Troy and various NDs getting ready for the flight.
We're ready to open the launch bay door.
Interior Phoenix cockpit. Riker looks at Cochrane, who shrugs.
Go ahead.
Interior missile silo control room. Troy works at control. Interior Phoenix cockpit. The cockpit rumbles and the large concrete silo door slides open. Sunlight streams in. Riker slides into one of the couches and looks out. The crystal blue Montana sky can be seen far above them. The moon is visible, a half crescent hanging in the morning sky. Riker eyes it for a moment.
Look at that.
What, you don't have a moon in the 24th century?
Sure we do. This looks like a lot different. 50 million people live on the moon in my time. You can see Tycho City, New Berlin, and Lake Armstrong on a day like this.
Cochrane can't help but look at the moon, trying to imagine the image Riker has described.
You know, Doctor?
Please, don't tell me it's all thanks to me. I've heard enough about that great Zephram Cochrane.
Cochrane continues to work at the navigational computer.
I don't know who wrote your history books or where you got your information, but you people have some pretty funny ideas about me. You all look at me like I'm some kind of saint or visionary or something.
I don't think you're a saint, Doc. But you did have a vision, and now we're saving you.
You know what my vision is? Dollar signs, money. There's still an economy out there, you know. There may not be any gold left in Fort Knox, but there's tons of cash overseas. Do you know how much the Indonesian Space Agency would pay for a faster-than-light rocket?
Can't imagine.
You're damn right you can't, but I can. I didn't build this ship to usher in a new era for humanity. You think I want to go to the stars? I don't even like to fly. I take trains. I built this ship so I could retire to some tropical island filled with naked women. That's Zephram Cochrane. That's his vision.
He goes back to punching numbers into the computer.
This other guy you keep talking about, this historical figure, I haven't seen him since the war.
A long beat. He looks uncomfortable, vaguely angry. Riker thinks for a moment.
Someone once said, don't try to be a great man. Just be a man. Let history make its own judgments.
Rhetorical nonsense.
You said it. About 10 years from now.
Cochrane looks at him in surprise, not sure what to say. Riker smiles, taps the clipboard that Cochrane's holding.
58 minutes, Doc. Better get back to that quick checklist.
Riker crawls out of the cockpit, leaving a still troubled but thoughtful Cochrane. Interior bridge. Lily is standing outside the emergency airlock with Beverly. The airlock door opens and Picard and Worf enter. They're pulling on their uniforms.
Stop them, but we lost talk.
Worf looks a little unsteady.
Worf, are you feeling all right?
But too quickly, I'm fine.
A light beat. Then we hear a voice speak urgently.
We're on the move again.
Everyone turns in time to see a security officer crawling out of a hatch.
The Borg just overran 3 of our defensive checkpoints. They've taken decks 5 and 6. They've adapted to every modulation of our weapons. It's like we're shooting blanks.
We'll have to start working on another way to modify our phasers so they're more effective. In the meantime, tell your men to stand their ground. Fight hand to hand if they have to.
Security officer looks grim, but nods.
Aye, sir.
He turns to go.
Wait. Captain, our weapons are useless. We must activate the auto-destruct sequence and use the escape pods to activate the ship.
No.
Jean-Luc, if we destroy the ship, we'll destroy the Borg.
We're going to stay and fight.
We have lost the Enterprise. We should not sacrifice more.
We have not lost the Enterprise, and we are not going to lose the Enterprise. Not to the Borg, and not while I'm in command. We have your orders.
The officer nods and walks off the bridge.
Captain, I must object to this course of...
Your objection has been noted.
Worf struggles to control his temper, tries to reestablish the personal bond he's developed with this man over the years.
With all due respect, sir, I believe you are allowing your personal experience with the Borg to influence your judgment.
Lily watches disturbed as Picard's rage mounts. Picard takes a quick step towards Worf, and for a moment, it looks like Picard might actually hit him, a terrible fury in his face, but he doesn't. He holds his voice down into a tight, cold tone.
You're afraid. You want to destroy the ship and run away. Coward.
Worf stiffens, and the tension level between the two men rises. Beverly tries to defuse the situation.
Jean-Luc.
But he cuts her off with a quick gesture of his hand. Worf looks in the eyes of the captain he's respected for so long.
If you were any other man, I'd kill you where you stand.
Get off my bridge.
A long, tense beat. Then Worf backs down. He turns, walks off the bridge, climbs down the hatch without a look back. The bridge is utterly silent as he leaves. Picard looks around the shocked faces of the crew for a moment, then turns and heads for the observation lounge. The door slides shut. Lily's the first to break the silence.
What do we do now?
We carry out his orders. Kaplan, Dyson, start working on a way to modify the...
Wait a minute. This is stupid. If we can get off the ship and blow it up, we should do it.
Once the captain's made up his mind, the discussion's over.
Beverly signals the NDs and they move into action. Lily gestures impatiently, then she's off toward the observation lounge.
Lily.
Too late. Lily's walking into interior observation lounge. Picard is standing on the table. He's just begun to disassemble a phaser rifle, and an engineering kit sits on the table. He looks up sharply as Lily storms in. These are two people on a collision course.
You son of a bitch.
This isn't really the time.
Look, I don't know jack about the 24th century, but I do know that everyone out there thinks that staying here and fighting the Borg is suicide. They're just too afraid to come out here and say it.
The crew is accustomed to following my orders.
They're probably accustomed to your orders making sense.
None of them understand the Borg as I do. No one does. No one can.
What's that supposed to mean?
He gives her a chilling look, which freezes her for a moment.
6 years ago, they assimilated me into their collective. With their cybernetic devices implanted throughout my body, I was linked to the hive mind. Every trace of individuality erased. I was one of them.
He lets that hang in the air for a moment. Picard's attitude is challenging, almost daring her to argue with him.
So as you can imagine, my dear, I have a somewhat unique perspective on the Borg, and I know how to fight them. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do.
He returns to his work on the table, pops open another panel on the rifle, and starts tinkering with circuits. But Lily doesn't move. She watches him for a moment, struck by a sudden realization. She smiles ruefully.
I'm such an idiot.
She smiles and sits down in one of the chairs and almost laughs.
It's so simple. The Borg hurt you, and now you're going to hurt him back.
Her comment hits a nerve, but he's not going to let her see that. He gives a cold smile.
In my century, we don't succumb to revenge. We have a more evolved sensibility.
She eyes him, confident that she's right, and goes on attack.
Bullshit. I saw the look on your face when you shot those Borg on the holodeck. You were almost enjoying it.
How dare you?
Come on, Captain, admit it. You're not the first person to get a thrill out of murdering someone. I see it all the time.
Picard is staring into the bristle. He's offended at the very notion of what she's saying.
Get out.
Or what? You'll kill me? Like you killed Ensign Lynch?
He glares at her. Their voices start rising as the argument heats up.
There was no way to save him.
You didn't even try. Where was that evolved sensibility then?
A poisonous silence.
You're as possessed now as you were when the Borg possessed you.
I don't have time for this.
Oh, hey, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt your little quest. Captain Ahab has to go hunt his whale.
What?
Don't you have books in the 24th century?
This is not about revenge.
Liar.
This is about saving the future of humanity.
Then blow up this ship.
No!
As he says this, Picard hurls the phaser rifle across the room and it smashes in the glass case, spilling artifacts everywhere. It's a moment of pure fury and rage, unlike anything we've seen from our captain.
I will not sacrifice the Enterprise. We've made too many compromises already, too many retreats. We invade our space and we fall back. We assimilate entire worlds and we fall back. Not again. The line must be drawn here, this far and no further. I will make them pay for what they've done.
An electrifying moment as both Lily and Picard realize what he's just said, and that everything she's been saying is true. A long, silent beat. Lily looks over at the shattered remains of the case, a couple broken Enterprise models on the deck.
You broke your ships.
Picard looks down, takes a few steps towards the window, and looks out at the stars.
See you around, Ahab.
Lily turns to go, but before she reaches the door, Picard's quiet voice stops her.
Hard upon the whale's right hump, the son of all the rage and hate felt by his old race. His chest had been a cannon, who would have shot his heart upon it.
Lily stops, puzzled. Picard turns to her with an ironic smile.
What?
Moody Dick.
Actually, I never read it.
She gives him an embarrassed smile. It lightens the moment just enough.
Ahab spent years hunting the white whale that crippled him, a quest for vengeance, and in the end, the whale destroyed him. And his ship.
I guess he didn't know when to quit.
He holds her eyes for a long moment, then heads out of the observation lounge. Lily follows him. Interior bridge. Picard enters. Beverly and the others turn to him. A quiet beat as everyone sees what he's going to do.
Prepare to evacuate the Enterprise.
Interior missile silo. Series of shots. Quick cuts. Riker, Cochrane, and Geordi strapping themselves into the Phoenix cockpit. Interior control room. In the control room, Troy and a couple of Starfleet NDs put on 21st century headsets to communicate with the Phoenix cockpit. The blast door begins closing. Interior Phoenix cockpit. Cochrane's hands flipping switches, working the controls over these shots.
ATR setting.
Active.
Main bus.
Ready.
Initiate pre-ignition sequence.
New angle. The Phoenix engines at the base of the ship begin spewing nitrogen gas. Interior Enterprise bridge. Picard in the captain's chair. Lily and Beverly standing nearby. Worf climbs up through the hatch.
Computer, this is Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Begin auto-destruct sequence. Authorization Picard 47 Alpha Tango.
Interior evacuation corridor. Starfleet crew members opening the hatches, checking the escape pods crawling inside.
Computer, this is Commander Beverly Crusher. Confirm auto-destruct sequence. Authorization Crusher 22 Beta Charlie.
An ND is working in a control panel. A monitor says enter destination coordinates. The ND types in a series of numbers, then the monitor screen shows a map of Earth and the graphic zooms in on a tiny island in the South Pacific. Coordinates accepted. Landing target, Gravit Island, area 10 square kilometers, population 0.
This is Lieutenant Commander Worf. Confirm auto-destruct sequence. Authorization Worf 37 Gamma Echo.
Interior bridge. As before, Picard, Beverly, Lily, and Worf.
Command authorization accepted. Awaiting final code to begin countdown.
This is Captain Picard. Destruct sequence A1. 15 minutes. Silent countdown.
Enable. Destruct in 14 minutes. 55 seconds. There will be no further audio warnings.
Picard, Worf, and Beverly exchange a look. Picard stands from his chair and takes a long, last look around his bridge.
So much for the Enterprise E.
Barely knew.
Think they'll build another.
Any letters left in the alphabet?
Beverly, Worf, and the other officers begin to crawl out through the Jeffries tube hatch.
Mr. Worf,
Worf stops and turns to him.
I regret some of the things I said to you earlier.
Some.
Picard smiles back, then holds out his hand, and Worf shakes it.
In fact, I think you're the bravest man I've ever known.
Thank you, sir.
See you on Gavit Island.
Worf exits, leaving Picard alone on the bridge. He takes a moment to walk around the deserted bridge of his ship one last time, and then Picard hears the whisper of Borg voices in his head again. He struggles to push away, trying not to be overwhelmed by the experience, and then a single voice cuts through the cacophony.
Captain.
Picard freezes. The voices are gone.
Data.
Hold a moment on Picard's growing realization. Interior missile silo control room. Troy is watching the countdown timer, which is approaching the final 30 seconds.
Control to Phoenix. Control to Phoenix. Final launch sequence checks are complete. You're at the 30-second mark. Good luck. Commander Riker, come in. We're at the 30-second mark.
Thanks, Deanna.
Interior Phoenix cockpit. Riker, Geordi, and Cochrane making final adjustments to the controls.
Everyone ready to make a little history?
Always am.
I think I'm forgetting something.
What?
I'm not sure. It's probably nothing.
15 seconds. Begin ignition sequence.
A low rumble begins and the ship starts to tremble slightly.
Oh God, now I remember. Where is it?
He starts searching his pockets frantically, looking for something. Troy's countdown continues over the following.
What? What?
10, 9, 8.
We can't lift off without it.
Okay, Geordi, let's abort.
7, 6, 5.
Oh, no, wait. I found it. Sorry.
He whips out an optical disc, quickly slips it into the slot in the control panel, and hits a switch.
4, 3, 2, 1.
And as the roar of the engines fill the cabin, we hear the rock and roll tune heard earlier through the cockpit. Riker and Geordi exchange a look, and Cochrane smiles.
Let's rock and roll.
Interior missile silo Phoenix engines. As they ignite and start pouring out sheets of flame. Interior missile silo control room. Troy reacts to the sound of rock music blaring in her headset. Interior Phoenix cockpit, which is shuddering and shaking, rock and roll music blaring. Exterior Montana missile silo wide shot. As the Phoenix is launched up into the sky, riding a pillar of fire and smoke, we hear the rock and roll music, which is now part of the score. Interior Phoenix cockpit. Ship shaking violently, Cochrane white-knuckling it, frightened. His first flight. But Riker and Geordi look perfectly calm, just another day in the office. Interior missile silo control room. Troy walking along the row of monitors and consoles, checking on the flight. Exterior missile complex town. A few townsfolk have stopped what they're doing and are looking up the sky, shielding their eyes against the sun. Interior Phoenix cockpit.
Can you turn it down a little?
Cochrane hits the control, lowers the rock music. The G-forces push him back into their seats.
There's a red light on the second intake valve.
Ignore it. We'll be fine. Prepare for first stage shutdown and separation on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
Exterior space, the Phoenix. The first stage booster separates from the ship and drops away, leaving 3/4 of the ship in space. After a beat, 2 50-foot-long sheets of metal fall away from the ship on either side of the Phoenix, revealing primitive warp narcils tucked inside the craft. The warp narcils then begin slowly extending themselves outward to either side. The basic design of the narcils should be familiar to anyone who's ever seen Star Trek. Interior Phoenix cockpit. The ship stops trembling and all is quiet.
All right, let's bring the warp core online.
Cochrane starts to work, but then glances out the window and stops and stares, a look of wonder on his face. Riker notices the look and nudges Geordi, who also sees the look on his face. They both smile and give him a moment. New angle as Cochrane gazes at the glorious sight of Earth far below.
Wow.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Cut to interior evacuation corridor. As seen before, the hatches are closing along the corridor. There are only 2 hatches still open. Picard and Lily are the last 2 left in the corridor. He hands her a pad.
If you see Commander Riker or any of my crew, give them this.
What is it?
Orders to find a quiet corner of North America and stay out of history's way.
An awkward beat. This is goodbye.
Well, good luck.
Both of us.
Picard smiles. She holds his eyes for a moment and sees right through him.
You're not leaving, are you?
I was held captive aboard the Borg ship. My crew risked everything to save me. There's someone who's still on this ship. I owe him the same.
Lily looks at him and finally nods.
Go find your friend.
A long moment, and then she goes into the escape pod. Picard closes the hatch behind her. A final look between them. Then Picard closes the hatch behind her and goes to a master control panel on the wall. Exterior space, the Enterprise. As 15 escape pods are ejected from the side of the saucer, as soon as the pods clear the ship, their own engines ignite and they start rocketing toward the distant Earth. Interior, Enterprise corridor. An empty normal corridor. Picard is walking purposely through the empty ship. He stops outside a hatch, pauses, and gathers himself, and then he hits a control and the hatch slides aside to reveal interior Borg-filled corridor. Dark, moody, dank. Picard steps through and walks down one of the creepy Borg-filled hallways seen earlier, and as he does, he begins to clear the distant whispering voices of the Borg collective in his head. He frowns, tries to shake it off, but this time the whispers won't go away. He continues to hear them as he moves down the corridor, passes an intersection. Two Borg suddenly walk out and block his path. Picard stops, a tense beat as he faces them. But the Borg make no aggressive move. Finally, they part and step aside, allowing him to pass. Picard continues walking, and the whispering voices start to get a little louder. Interior, Deck 16, corridor. Just outside main engineering, the scene of the earlier firefight, Picard hesitates. The Borg voices in his head have now grown to a loud cacophony, an incoherent babble, almost overwhelming him as he prepares himself to go through those doors. Suddenly, the doors to engineering slide open, and simultaneously the voices stop. Picard pauses, looks back down the way he came as if reconsidering this decision. Then he steels himself and walks inside. Interior, Borg hive. Picard enters. The Borg queen is nowhere in sight, but dozens of Borg drones line the walls in their respective alcoves. Picard cautiously makes his way into the vast chamber. He looks around. Again, the Borg drones pay no attention to him. Movement behind him, the Borg queen. Picard freezes, a chill running up his spine. He slowly turns, sees her, and takes a step back in surprise.
What's wrong, Locutus? Don't you recognize me?
Memory flash, the Borg queen on the Borg ship leaning over Picard as Locutus.
Organic minds are such fragile things. How could you forget me so quickly?
Memory flash, the queen and Locutus face to face.
We were very close, you and I.
Memory flash, the queen caressing Locutus. He doesn't react. Picard staggers back as though the memories are physically assaulting him. He hears the voices in the collective again, and now the queen smiles slightly in satisfaction.
You can still hear our song.
He stares at the queen with a mixture of shock, realization, anger, his memories finally falling into place.
Yes, I remember you. You were there the entire time. But that ship and all the Borg on it were destroyed.
You think in such three-dimensional terms. How small you've become. Data understands me, don't you, Data?
Data, who has been one of the Borg alcoves lining the walls the entire time, suddenly steps forward. He is nearly human. Gold eyes now blue, hair tousled, most of his face real flesh. Pinocchio is almost a real boy.
What have you done to him?
Given him what he's always wanted, flesh and blood.
We're not sure what's going on inside Data's head, how much he's changed.
Let him go. He's not the one you want.
Are you offering yourself to us?
Picard bores in on her, the memories fueling his anger, and at the same time he's gaining an awareness into his experience as Locutus, putting together the pieces of a puzzle and finding the chink in the Borg Queen's armor. Picard at his moment most insightful and commanding.
Not for myself. That's it. I remember now. It wasn't enough to assimilate me. You wanted me to give myself freely to the Borg. To you.
You flatter yourself. I've overseen the assimilation of countless millions. You were no different.
A lie. You wanted more than just another Borg. Well, a human being with a mind of his own who could bridge the gulf between the Borg and humanity. You wanted a counterpart. I resisted. I fought you.
The Borg Queen eyes Picard for a long moment.
You can't begin to imagine the life.
It's not too late. Cutis can still be with you, just as you wanted it, equal. The day to go, I will take my place at your side, willingly, without resistance.
The Queen moves closer, coming right up to his face.
Such a noble creature, a quality we sometimes lack. Distinctiveness to our own. Welcome home, Locutus.
She reaches out a hand, lightly touches his cheek. Picard tries not to flinch. She pulls away, looks over at Data. The force field surrounding him flashes off.
You're free to go, Data.
But Data doesn't move.
Data, go.
No, I do not wish to go.
Picard reacts in surprise.
As you can see, I've already found an equal. Data, deactivate the self-destruct sequence.
Picard reacts. How did she know that? He takes a step towards Data, but it's immediately grabbed back by two drones.
Data, don't do it. Listen to me.
Data quickly works the computer console for a moment.
Auto-destruct sequence deactivated.
The Queen smiles at Picard in victory. Picard, whose entire plan has been defeated, thinks rapidly, but can't find a way out.
Now, enter the encryption codes and give me computer control.
Data works. Again, the Queen stares into Picard's eyes, as if pointing out to him just how completely he's been beaten. All of the consoles and engineering suddenly come to life. The warp core starts pulsing again. Data moves to her side as if the most natural thing in the world. Picard is stunned by the betrayal.
He will make an excellent drone.
The two drones start to drag Picard off. Interior Phoenix cockpit. As before, Riker, Cochrane, Geordi at the controls.
Plasma injectors are online. Everything's looking good. I think we're ready. Riker?
They should be out there right now. We need to break the warp barrier within the next 5 minutes if we're going to get through their attention.
Nacelles charged and ready.
Riker looks at Cochrane.
Let's do it.
Engage.
Exterior space, the Phoenix. The warp nacelles flare with power and the ship begins moving forward in space. The Enterprise suddenly looms into frame. It quickly gains on the tiny Phoenix. Interior Phoenix cockpit as before.
Warp field looks good. Structural integrity holding.
Riker activates a monitor which begins showing a digital display of their speed.
Speed 20,000 kilometers per second.
Cochrane reaches up to hit some switches above his head, and as he does, he glances out the window and reacts in shock.
Jesus.
Riker and Geordi look up outside the windows as they see the massive Enterprise headed their way.
Relax, Doctor. I'm sure they're just here to give us a send-off.
Interior Borg hive as Picard is slammed into the surgical table by the Queen. Picard's lying on the opposite direction that Data was, facing the doors. The Queen hovers over to Picard. Picard stares at the Queen, unafraid of more defiant than ever. Data is now working at a sensor console located near the entrance to engineering. Above his console is a view screen monitor.
I am bringing the external sensors online.
Data works for a moment, and then the view screen is activated, and we see an exterior view of the Phoenix. Interior Phoenix cockpit. As before, Cochrane is now steering the ship with 21st century joystick control. The ship is moving faster and faster, trembling now, a roar building.
30 seconds to warp threshold.
Exterior space. The warp ship whips by, and a moment later, the Enterprise roars into view, chasing the tiny ship. Interior Phoenix cockpit, trembling harder.
Approaching light speed.
Geordi glances out a side window.
Pretty close.
We're at critical velocity.
The The ship is really shaking hard now. Interior Borg Hive. Data is moving across the room towards the auxiliary weapons control console, which is located near the warp core itself. Note, it is important that this console be situated so that it cannot be seen if the Borg Queen is looking at the view screen. Data works the weapons console for a moment and then crosshair targeting grid appears on the view screen.
Quantum torpedoes locked.
Destroy them.
After a beat, Data hits a control. Exterior space, the Enterprise. As it fires a spread of 3 photon torpedoes at the tiny warp ship. Interior, Borg Hive. Picard looks at the view screen with horror as torpedoes streak out toward the Phoenix. The Queen is also watching the screen with satisfaction. Interior, Phoenix cockpit. Shaking harder than ever now. Riker, Geordi, Cochrane working. They do not see the torpedoes approaching.
We're crossing the threshold.
Exterior space, the Phoenix. The torpedoes coming closer. Closer. Interior Borg Hive, the Queen and Picard watching the view screen. In the background, Data begins to slowly take a few steps towards the warp core, also watching the view screen. This should appear to be a casual move. Data trying to get a better look at the screen. The Queen should not be able to see Data. Her attention is on the view screen.
Watch your futures end.
Exterior space, the Phoenix. The 3 torpedoes fly past the Phoenix, narrowly missing the ship. Interior Borg Hive. Picard and the Queen react to the near miss on the monitor. She whirls around towards Data, who is now standing by one of the coolant tanks.
Data!
Resistance is futile.
He whirls and punches his fist into one of the coolant tanks. A huge explosion of deadly liquid gas knocks Data across the room and begins to sweep through the entire Borg Hive. Everything happens at once. The Borg Queen reacts, looks towards the ceiling, prompting her 3 umbilical cables to start quickly snaking down and rescuing her from the gas. Picard stands on the table, throwing himself at the descending tables, grabs onto one of them, and begins a desperate scramble towards the ceiling, away from the gas. The Queen sees this and grabs a second cable with one hand, pulls herself up to avoid the onrushing of gas. Exterior space, the Phoenix. As it goes into warp, it shoots forward in the familiar rubber band effect and streaks away from the Enterprise. Interior, Phoenix cockpit. Everyone slammed back into their seats and the stars whip past the windows. Cochrane cuts loose with a yell and fear of exhilaration.
Woo!
Interior, Borg Hive. Picard is still hanging onto his cable, gas swirling just inches below him. The Queen is pulling herself up on her cable, reaches out a hand and grabs his leg. Picard tries to kick at her, but it's no use. The Queen yanks down hard, causing Picard to slip another inch down the cable. Another yank. Data suddenly rises up out of the gas behind the Queen. The human flesh, only half of his face and arm is melted away, but it doesn't slow him down. He throws himself at the Queen and dislodges her. They both fall into the gas. The cable wraps around Picard, twitches, and goes limp. Picard quickly scrambles up towards the ceiling to safety. In the gas, the Queen is lying on the deck, the gas swirling around her. As it does, we see the flesh on her body start to liquefy and melt away. Interior, Phoenix cockpit, as before, but the ride has smoothed out considerably. Everyone exchanges a smile. It's a moment of victory.
That should be enough. Throttle back, bring us out of warp.
We drop out of warp. The view on the front window begins turning, and in the far distance they can see a single blue star brighter than all the others.
Is that Earth?
That's it.
We begin to see a change in Cochrane's face as he stares in the distant point of light.
It's so small.
About to get a whole lot bigger.
Off the moment, we cut to the interior of the Borg Hive. Picard still wrapped up in the now limp cables. He starts to make his way through the tangle of cables over to the side of the room where he can safely jump down to the 3rd level of engineering. The deadly gas fills the lower half of the room like a soft blanket far below. He jumps on the 3rd level grating, makes his way to a wall panel. The Borg drones suddenly in front of him. Picard reacts, ready to fight, but the Borg is twitching, convulsing in the throes of some kind of seizure. Picard moves around him, opens the wall panel, and hits a control. Immediately, there is whooshing around as the enormous ventilation system kicks in. Picard moves to the edge of the 3rd level and looks down. Picard's point of view, as the last few wisps of gas are being sucked out of the room, revealing a scene of carnage, Borg drones are lying on the floor, dead. All organic matter and flesh have been dissolved from their bodies, leaving only mechanical components. Picard quickly scrambles to the access ladders to the 1st level. His boots hiss slightly as they hit the residual acid left on the floor. He looks around and finally sees Data. As he starts to move to him, when he hears the voices of the collective in his head, he looks up to see the upper level. Several Borg drones are writhing and fritzing, but all still alive. The death of their queen is throwing them into a state of shock. Picard is still reacting to the voices. He senses a movement behind him and whirls to find the Borg queen. She's lying nearby, now a cybernetic skeleton, a metallic spinal column with a blinking steel cranium in the top. The queen writhes, a frightening moment, truly frightening. And then Picard's hands reach in, grab the metal spine, and snap it in two. The blinking cranium fritzes out, and the voices of the collective stop, once and for all. The upper level Borg drones all slump over dead, lights out. Interior corridor, 2 Borg drones moving down the hall suddenly stop, twitch. The blinkies on their body go out, and they both fall over dead. Their connection to their queen severed. Interior Borg hive. Data looks up at Picard, who helps him to his feet.
Are you all right?
I would imagine I look worse than I feel.
Data looks down at the smoking form of the queen.
Strange. Part of me is sorry that she is dead.
She was unique.
She brought me closer to humanity than I ever thought possible, and for a time I was tempted by her offer. 0.86 seconds.
Picard looks at him and begins to smile.
For an android, that is nearly an eternity.
Picard smiles and helps him to his feet. They head for the door. The camera pulls back to emphasize the 2 men alone in the smoking ruin of engineering. Cut to exterior missile complex. Townspeople are moving at the edge of the complex, a sense of urgency. Something's going on.
Captain's log, April 5th, 2063. The voyage of the Phoenix was a success. Again, the alien ship detected the warp signature and is on its way to a rendezvous with history.
Bright lights are glowing just above the night clouds. A massive ship is about to burst through. The townspeople, men, women, and children of the 21st century, trying to see what's happening, and they react with shock and amazement at what they see. An alien ship is settling down onto the Earth, lights cutting through the darkness. Our crew, Riker, Troy, Geordi, and Cochrane and Lily, standing together. Picard and Beverly stand apart from the others, not wanting to be noticed. They're watching history unfold with awe and wonder. This is the moment they've been waiting for. The alien ship settles, engines winding down. Riker and Geordi move to Cochrane and take him gently by the arm.
Doctor, you're on.
Cochrane looks a little bewildered and tries to grapple with the moment.
My God, they're really from another world?
And you're going to want to meet the man who flew that warp ship.
There's a mechanical whir and a hiss of air as the hatch opens on the ship. Riker looks at Cochrane, who hesitates for a moment, then finally takes a deep breath and strides out towards the alien ship, a man alone about to change the course of human history. Alien ship. As Cochrane stops a few feet away, the hatch swings completely open, light streams out into the night air. The 3 hooded robed figures emerge, our crew watching in awe. A Vulcan pulls his hood back, revealing the familiar slanted eyebrows and pointed ears, himself with that austere, regal dignity we've come to associate with his race. He steps forward to greet Cochrane, raises his hand as if to wave. Cochrane raises his hand automatically as if to wave back, but then the Vulcan splits his fingers in the classic Vulcan greeting.
Live long and prosper.
Cochrane tries to emulate the Vulcan hand sign, but can't quite do the awkward finger split.
Thanks.
The Vulcan cocks an eyebrow at him. The very first alien-human relationship is underway. Our crew, our heroes, share a glance with each other and smile.
It's time for us to make a discreet exit.
For nods.
To Enterprise. Then my team is up.
Everyone moves off, Picard and Lily alone for a moment. The bright lights from the Vulcan ship cast them in a dramatic silhouette. They've become friends, and under other circumstances, they might have become something more.
Envy. Too.
Envy you, taking these first steps into a new frontier.
Might have been fun to take them together.
A quiet beat.
I'll miss you, Lily.
Lily gives him a smile, and they take each other's hands for a warm moment. They lock eyes, then Lily walks away. Picard takes his place with his crew and taps his comm badge.
Carta Enterprise. Energize.
The crew dematerializes together, and Lily can't help but look up at the night sky. Interior bridge. Everybody there. Picard, Riker, Data, Geordi, Beverly, and Troy. Our entire crew together.
Report.
Moon's gravitational field obstructed our temperature. Vulcan did not detect us.
Picard nods, satisfied, and heads for his chair.
I've reconfigured our warp field to match the chronometric readings of the Borg sphere.
Recreate the vortex, Commander.
Aye, sir.
All decks report ready.
Data turns and we see his face is still partially metallic.
Helm standing by.
More calls for the 24th century, Mr. Data.
Picard hesitates, looks around the bridge for a moment. The family is back together.
I suspect our future is there waiting for us.
Course laid in, sir.
Make it so.
Exterior of the night sky. As seen from Earth, Lily watching a colorful flash of light in the heavens high above as the vortex opens and the tiny star of the Enterprise flies inside. Exterior missile complex. Pull back to reveal that Lily is standing outside the tent bar. Inside an open bar, we can see Cochrane with the Vulcans, talking excitedly. He hits a control on the jukebox and rock music starts to blare. The Vulcans raise an eyebrow at the curious noise. Townspeople are gathering, watching this meeting unfold with awe and fascination. It's a moment frozen in time. Star Trek is born. Fade to black. Roll credits.
Oogie boogie doo wah. Well done. I know that song. How sad is that?